one of the finest areas in Cave Creek. So hope to see many of you there on Saturday, November 15th.
What was the name of the event?
Desert Discovery
I
Days.
think the town's grant program also
Yes.
supports it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, other announcements from council? Okay, call to public.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay, so town manager report?
Yes, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give you a couple of updates. As you're aware, last Thursday, the town had a major water system disruption. It impacted approximately 100 homes on the west side to Cave Creek Wash. It started with 10:30 in the morning. The monitoring systems at 24th and Cloud and 38th Street booster sites recorded a pressure site of about 50 pounds per square inch in the water system west of Cave Creek Wash. Our systems also reported a spike in water leaving the Neary booster station into zone 4. The pressure spike was caused by the failure of the 8-inch zone 4 to 1 pressure reducing valve on the west side of Cave Creek Road at Canyon Ridge Drive. One of the control lines for the PRV broke, causing the valve to fail open. So basically it just remained open when it was supposed to be fluctuating as pressure would come through. The pressure spike caused 3 main line breaks, one at 32nd north of Cloud Road, the other at 36th Street north of Carefree Highway, and at also Cloud Road east of 34th Street. Town staff continued to work until about 9:30 that night, trying to get the not only identify the issue, but also do major repairs that included isolating the 8-inch PRV and also doing 3 separate mainline repairs. And we're very fortunate that the public works staff also stepped up to help the staff to get this done, as well as the wastewater staff. So water was restored basically by about 9:30 to 10 o'clock that night. The reason I'm bringing this up is this is one of the largest water outages that we've had in a long time in terms of the number of customers that were affected. And it just really demonstrates the need for us to continue to monitor and continue to do a lot of our maintenance activities to ensure that the lines are continue to be solid. The other thing that we found that the lines that were broken, the bedding that was under the water lines was on rocks, which over time caused the pipe to vibrate and weaken. So caused them to burst due to these pressure spikes. So and then the other thing I wanted to share real quickly is that as the council's aware, we had a successful Taste of Cave Creek event. And the town this year was a co-sponsor. We helped with the public safety and co-publicity for that event. And also for the first time, we actually sponsored what was called the Mayor's Cup. And I want to thank all the council members who were there to assist the mayor in doing the judging for the first Mayor's Cup. Harold's Corral was the winner. And that's going to be something we're going to continue to do each year. We had a follow-up meeting today with the Taste of Cave Creek. And my understanding is all the restaurants that were there at this meeting today were raving about how they really liked it. And some of them did not know about it and want to know, they definitely want to participate and make sure that they're prepared for this next year. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a presentation on the presentation of statutory requirements regarding borrowing authority for utility funds and self-sufficiency.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. So we have with us today our bond counsel, Timothy Stratton. And I just want to give you a little bit of background about Tim. He is an AV preeminent rated attorney, which I had to look that up myself if any of you aren't familiar with what that is. So that's a top rating that you can get through the Martindale-Hubbell, which is a peer review. So both the capabilities and the ethical aspects are covered in that rating. He focuses on working with public entities and with financings for cities, counties, and special districts. Tim also serves underwriters and banks as underwriter counsel and bank counsel. He represents both large and small Arizona entities in the areas of public finance, utility finance, tax law, securities law, and WIFA and USDA rural development projects, and has clients nationwide. He has expertise in municipal tax controversy and municipal securities disclosure, including the preparation of blue sky memoranda and disclosure policies. Tim is also a member of the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools, having been appointed to that office by Governor Doug Ducey. He has also served as a member of the State of Arizona Board of Bar Examiners, serves as the town attorney for the town of Welton, Arizona, and as special counsel to other cities, and has worked on the Cave Creek finance issues for many years. He has been practicing in Arizona since 2010 and has closed billions of dollars of bond and other types of public financing transactions, including excise tax obligations and WIFA loans. So there were questions that have come up with statutory requirements, particularly with ARS 9-530 and the self-sufficiency of utility funds. And so he's here to help clarify all of that, which turns out is quite a tangled web in the statutes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I recognize many familiar faces, and your introduction really makes me look good. So I didn't pay her to say all of that, by the way.
I
But
thought you were going to ask for a raise next.
no, not at all. Not at all. It's my understanding after being part of the last meeting virtually and speaking with staff that there were some questions about the self-sufficiency requirement, so-called self-sufficiency requirement in the statutes, and how that interplays with the different types of borrowings and bonds that utilities and cities in particular can enter into under Arizona law. I guess we'll start with the high level here. How all of that, but I can't really work technology, right? Okay, so Arizona law provides several ways that a city or town can issue debt obligations for various projects, but specifically we're talking about municipal utilities here, which are your water system. And that's the nature of the question that we have today. First of all, you can issue municipal bonds, which are bonds which are authorized under Title IX of the statute. Very specific legal requirements involved in those. You can also issue so-called excise tax obligations for improvements to the water system, sewer system, and other municipal infrastructure projects. It's not confined to those, but excise tax bonds are a separate and distinct form of an obligation that can be issued under the statutes and case law in Arizona. And finally, we have the WIFA loans, which are loans, low interest rate loans, and some grants, but loans through the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, which again, as many of you know, given the fact that the town has some outstanding WIFA loans, are one way that you have in the past paid for improvements to the water systems. Those three entities or three types of borrowings have various requirements, but think of them as separate buckets. There's authorization in the statutes for each of those three types of borrowings. So we'll talk about municipal bonds first, and those are issued under Title IX, Article 3. Now, 9-530 requires that a municipality issuing those bonds prescribe service charges such that a utility for which the bonds are being issued shall always remain self-supporting with revenue. That is the self-sufficiency requirement. So there is no general requirement under the statutes that a utility be self-sufficient. That self-sufficiency requirement is tucked into 9-530, which is the section of the statutes that deal with issuing municipal bonds for your project. Now, ARS 9521, which is also part of that section, goes on to define bond as any bond issued under this article being Article 3 of the municipal code. Excise tax obligations, on the other hand, are not issued under the statute at all. Excise tax obligations came about in the late 1960s via court law that arose when the city of Phoenix was financing its convention center. And we, in the bond arena, just refer to these as the convention center cases. There are two cases in particular that are related. One was remanded back to the courts, but it involved a lease, basically a lease and a lease back of the property of the convention center properties by the city of Phoenix. The obligations are not considered bonds. They're widely used by municipalities, including the town. You have issued excise tax obligations in the past. And the key part about the excise tax obligations and what that lawsuit established was that those are not counted against the town's debt limit. So we wouldn't run our own household probably this way, you know, if we borrow money, it's a debt, right? But under the requirements, the constitutional debt limits and the statutory debt limits, the courts have held consistently that the excise tax obligations don't count against debt. What that does is that triggers a number of things, one of which being that you don't need voter approval to issue excise tax bonds. Again, there have been billions and billions and billions of these issued since the late 1960s. Excise tax bonds, I would say, are primarily the way that most cities and towns in Arizona now finance their municipal improvements because of the ease of financing. Those are based upon your excise tax receipts, which you receive that your local businesses generate and which are paid to you, remitted to you by the state. And then also we pledge the state's shared revenues to that. Jim Strickland is going to be here later, and he will talk about how much coverage you have. But suffice it to say, the town has many, many times coverage of what bonds you would be or obligations you would be thinking about issuing on this. So those are the excise tax obligations. The third, oops, I went the wrong way. The third type of obligation is a loan, and those are the WIFA loans. Loans also are not bonds, and they're widely used by municipalities, and they have their own separate statutory authority, which is outside of that Article 3 municipal bond authority, which does contain that self-sufficiency requirement. The WIFA loans are out of ARS 9571, and they're out of Article 6, not out of Article 3, which has the restriction. So Article 6, 571 states that if you are a town of 150,000 or less, you do not need voter approval to issue this loan or to engage in this loan with the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. Again, the WIFA loans are widely used by municipalities, and the revenue requirement for self-sufficiency does not apply to the WIFA loans either. And the town, as you're well aware, has several outstanding WIFA loans and has used WIFA from time to time to finance various improvements to your systems. And with that, I will open it up, Mayor, to any questions that you or council or staff have regarding any of these types of borrowings that we're considering.
Questions?
Oh.
Yes, please.
So if we issued a municipal bond, it would have to pay for itself, correct?
If you issued a municipal bond, that's correct. Anything issued under Title 3 contains the self-sufficiency requirement.
Okay, so if we went with an excise tax obligation, we just have to say half cent or quarter cent or whatever it is for the duration of the bond, correct?
Correct. It would be payable. The bond documents would have a pledge. And in the bond documents, you would be pledging your excise tax receipts for the payment of that bond, whatever the life of the bond ended up being.
So from a bondholder's perspective, municipal bonds, I know, get preferential tax treatment.
Mhm.
What does it do with an excise tax bond? Is it similar?
Great question. Yes, council member. All three of these are eligible for tax exemption. So for the bank purchase agreement, because we would be talking here for these capital improvements under 10 million, you would be able to get bank qualification, which gives you an even greater tax advantage, gives the purchaser a greater tax advantage, which they pass upon down to the town in the form of a lower interest rate. So these would be, all three of these, including the WIFA loans, would be tax exempt. So the tax treatment on all three is identical.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Yes, no? Questions? I have none. So, okay.
Mayor, I have a question on the
Sure.
self-supporting for the bonds.
Mhm.
If the bonds are secured with property taxes, the self-supporting one doesn't apply, right?
If they were secured by property taxes and there had been a vote, you are correct, Attorney Sims, that it would not apply in that situation. But it does apply if you're issuing revenue bonds.
Seeing no further questions, I guess you've educated us. Thank you
Great,
very much.
great. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks.
Thank you. No. Next on the agenda is a consent agenda. We have 6 items. Anybody have questions on any of these items that'd like to hear more information before we vote on them as a group? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion, please? Tom?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Tom. I'll try not to surprise you next time. Next on the agenda is the council discussion possible approval for case Z 24-01 Gamage and Burnham zone change request, second reading of ordinance 25-12.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of council. Staff is here this evening to bring forward to council consideration of case Z-24-01 Gamage and Burnham zone change request application, second reading of ordinance 2025-12. The request is to amend the Town of Cave Creek zoning map for the subject parcels 211-47-089B and 211-47-089C from the existing Desert Rural 89 zoning district to commercial buffer. The properties are located along Carefree Highway at the northwest corner of 51st Street and within the Carefree Highway specific area plan. At the Planning Commission meeting held on September 18, 2025, the Town of Cave Creek Planning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval of zone change application case Z-24-01. At the previous town council meeting held on October 21st, 2025, the council gave first reading of ordinance 2025-12, where council voted unanimously 7-0 to approve case Z-24-01. Should council give second reading this evening, approval on second reading, a 30-day effective period shall begin before the zoning is changed and the zoning map is updated. Since this is second reading, it's really nothing to present. At this moment, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, are there any questions? The applicant is also here again to answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, there is, we'll have, anything else for you fellas?
No, Mayor.
Okay, well, public comment,
I have none.
no public comment. Okay. So I'll make the motion, move to approve second reading of ordinance 2025-12 related to case Z-24-01, a zoning request to change the underlying zoning of 2 parcels totaling approximately 2 acres from a current zoning of desert rural residential DR 89 to a commercial buffer CB
Second.
zone.
Second,
That was quick.
well,
Okay.
you were second. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm in favor of it. I'm gonna vote yes.
We need the tax revenue, yes.
Others on the right? On the left? Tom?
Yeah, this is a fulfillment of planning that's been done by staff for many years, and I'm pleased to see this coming about. Their work is so important to the town.
Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is council discussion, possible approval of second reading of ordinance 2025-13. And here we go. An ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending zoning ordinance chapter 2 residential zones, Chapter 3, commercial zones, Chapter 12, site plans, Chapter 14, officers, boards, and commissions, and Chapter 15, zoning procedures to be in conformance with HB 2447 and complete administrative updates.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. So this agenda item, along with the next two items, are the second reading of the ordinances related to House Bill 2447 that I presented at the last council meeting. But since there were no changes from first reading to second reading, I'm not going to go through that presentation again, but I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Questions? You satisfied us all the last time. So, okay. So we're looking for a motion.
Can we approve all three rather than going through in detail? Just one motion to approve. all three?
Need to approve each or separate.
Yeah.
I apologize. You need to have a vote. Maybe someone may want to vote one and not the other. I doubt it, but you need to give that option.
Okay. You will make the motion.
Sure.
I'll read faster next time.
Move to approve the second reading, the ordinance 2025-13, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the zoning ordinance, Chapter 2, residential zones, Chapter 3, commercial zones, Chapter 12, site plans, Chapter 14, officers, boards, and commissions, and Chapter 15, zoning procedures to be in conformance with HB 2447 and complete administrative updates.
Second. Okay, you have the motion?
It's not like we have a choice.
Yes. I have no comment. Others have a comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're on to number 3, which is council discussion, possible approval of second reading of ordinance 2025-14. An ordinance of the mayor and council of town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the subdivision ordinance, Chapter 1, principles and policies, Chapter 2, planning standards and procedures, Chapter 4, engineering standards and procedures, Chapter 6, lot splits, lot line adjustments, and assemblages, Chapter 7, financial assurance agreement, and Chapter 8, definitions to be in conformance with HB 2447 and complete administrative updates. No comments?
Nothing further to add, nope.
Anybody want to?
I'll read again. Move to approve second reading of ordinance 2025.
Excuse me if I can just interrupt, Councilmember Rhodes. You could actually just say so moved.
So
You don't have to
moved.
read it all.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're on to number 4, which is council discussion and possible approval of second reading of ordinance 2025-15, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the Cave Creek Town Code, Title Roman numeral 15, Land Usage, Chapter 153, Subdivision of Land, Section 153.01, Land Splits, to be in conformance with Arizona House Bill 2447.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're on to number,
Thank you, Mayor, members of council.
yeah, thank you. We're on to number 5, council discussion, possible approval of resolution number 2025-27, authorizing an application for a water augmentation loan from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, resolution number 2025-28, approving sale and execution and delivery of excise tax revenue obligations, and resolution number 2025-29 regarding intention to issue tax exempt obligations.
Good evening again. So I want to start off with, this is not committing us to anything on any of the debt financing options at this time. What we're doing is setting ourselves up to be able to explore the options and choose which ones will be the most beneficial for us. So there we go. So what we're looking at for the debt financing for the Harquahala purchase that was approved by council, the agreement was for $11,250,000. We are including an estimate of cost of issuance of $150,000. So looking at debt financing for $11,400,000. There are two different options that we're looking at here and requesting to pursue. The first on the left, so talking about a WIFA loan. So WIFA has recently created this water augmentation fund with some monies that were allocated from the state budget. The last I heard, and Jim Strickland may have further information, but they were still working on what their application process is going to look like for that loan. They are saying that for fiscal year 26, that there will be 96.2 million that they will be loaning out. So compared to what we know other municipalities are spending for Harquahala, that's not much. We don't know how WIFA is going to determine how they're going to split that money. Are they going to do it based off of the most need? Are they going to do it based off of, well, let's just be fair to everybody and give everybody a little bit? I don't know. So we do expect that there would be some pretty hefty competition in that. And then our other recommendation would be looking at the direct placement excise tax obligations, and those do tend to be higher in the interest rates, but it's usually a lot easier to get through that process and get the money quicker. WIFA can take a while in their process, and we don't know what kind of process it's going to be for their water augmentation fund at this time. We would bring back to you what our recommendation of which path that we would recommend that we go down, whether it's going down the WIFA loan process or the direct placement excise tax obligations, or a combination of the two. So if we get part of the funding from a WIFA loan and part of it from the excise tax obligations, that could be an option as well. So in your packet, you have a resolution that would allow us to apply for the WIFA loan through the Water Augmentation Fund. So for sure, no commitment there. With the direct placement excise tax obligations, so again, so we've got in the documentation that it would not exceed the 11 million point four, and that it would not exceed 20-year term. It's very unlikely that the banks would be willing to go longer than 20 years. That's usually about the max of what they're willing to do. In the documentation, we're saying not to exceed a 6% bond yield based off of recommendations from Jim Strickland of having that room for that. We expect that it probably wouldn't be quite that high, but there has been a little bit of uptick in the rates. But the longer the term, the higher the rate is that the banks want. Going through this process with the resolution for pursuing these direct placement excise tax obligations does start the clock for us, because if we wait and go through the process and then come to council and say, hey, we want to do this, then it takes 30 days before the resolution would be effective. And we want to be able to lock in the rates and move quickly on this, because we have a rather tight timeline for getting the funding because the Harquahala agreement requires payment by February 15th. And it eliminates the need for doing an emergency clause, which has come into question about debt financings, about whether or not emergency clauses can be used. So everybody's trying to avoid it just because of the questions. Also included in the packet, the draft documents of what the excise tax trust agreement would look like, the excise tax purchase agreement, and the legal opinion, all related to that direct placement excise tax obligations. And the resolution for reimbursement of expenditures. So if we do need to proceed with payment before the closing of the financing, that we could go back and reimburse ourselves for that. So in that case, we would be relying on our general fund cash. And so I have on here that this is related to our fiscal sustainability priority. One of the things you'll notice that's different in this compared to the request to pursue the debt financing for the utility CIP projects that you gave permission a couple meetings or so ago, is that you're not seeing a request for the funding from the banks, because we already have the RFF, the request for funding, out on the street for the utility ones. utility CIP projects that the recommendation from our financial advisor, Jim Strickland, was that we use that as the vehicle because we're not legally required to do that. We could direct negotiate with whatever bank we wanted to. And so he's recommending that we rely on that. So both Tim Stratton, our bond counsel, and Jim Strickland, our financial advisor, are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Question, Dusty.
What's the annual payout for the 11.4 million?
So we were estimating around like 600,000 to 700,000, I think.
Depends on the duration of the loan.
So we're gonna do a 20-year loan, obviously, and it's gonna be 6% interest. So what would the payout be annually?
Give me a minute. I'll come back. Can I come back to that?
Sure.
Do the calculation with my calculator. Just to fill in a little bit more on WIFA, I did talk to Scott Conley today, one of their staff members. He's indirectly involved with the process. They had told us originally it was going to be like a 30-day application, and now we're hearing 45 to 60 days, which concerns us a little bit with respect to trying to close before February 15th.
Right.
They don't really know the process. The normal process is, for a revolving fund loan is probably a 6-month process, for the application period, for the review period, for 2 different board meetings. And then they give you your terms and they want you to approve that at a council meeting and wait 30 more days for the emergency clause not to be there and to have it effective. So we've made some suggestions on how they might be able to streamline the process, but they don't really know the process yet. But the only thing I did glean from them is in their initial discussions, they're talking about a 30-year repayment. We're hoping for a 50-year repayment or 40-year repayment because you're going to be buying a 100-year asset if you buy Harquahala Water. And so anything we can do to push that out will be helpful. And based on the request for funding that we did for your other utilities, we were able to identify 3 financial institutions that are all willing to go out with a final maturity of 20 years. So if we do a bank financing, we feel good that we can accomplish that. It's hard to say at what rate. The longest we went on the other utility financings was 15 years. But after those bids came in, rates went up after the Federal Reserve lowered rates. Chairman Powell talked about how they're not going to necessarily lower rates again in December. So bear with me for a second.
So this is Kalen Dwyer with Columbia Capital Management. I'm Jim Strickland's colleague. Just figured I'd jump in here real quick because I've got some numbers in front of me. So the 11 million over 20 years at 6%. And as Sherry noted earlier, 6%'s almost certainly too high, and we've got bids well below that. But if we did assume 6% at 11 million over 20 years, you're looking at about $950,000 a year in debt service cost, assuming you wanted to amortize that to the tune of level payments over that period. If you reduce that to closer to 4%, which is more in the ballpark, and again, you finance the full 11 million over 20 years, you're looking at about $800,000 annually in debt service costs. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you,
Kalen.
So that would be about 1/4% sales tax, correct? A little more?
Of the,
If it's the 750 or 800 or whatever it was, it would be right around 1/4% of sales tax, right?
I'd have to do that calculation. I don't know.
Because we said that 1% was 1.5 million, maybe it's a 0.5 cent. So it'd be a 0.5 cent sales tax. half cent.
The half cent was bringing in close to 2 million,
Okay,
or a
so,
little over 2
so
million.
we're looking at somewhere around 0.25% sales tax, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
about that.
Other questions here? Questions on Cynthia?
Thank you, Mayor. With the WIFA Water Augmentation Fund, there seems to be a lot of state-based discussion still about if adequate revenue is going to be there for the WIFA loan process and likely to be cut again. Would that affect the augmentation fund as well as WIFA loans available for other purposes?
Mayor, members of the council, the other WIFA loans, the state revolving fund money, is matching funds with the federal government, and the loans are recycled. And so WIFA has plenty of access to funding for traditional projects. The augmentation fund started out, I think, at 250 million, and it's been whittled down. And one of the reasons why they're pushing to get it out is because they don't want the state to sweep the money and to not have anything available. So that's one of the reasons why they're kind of pushing now to deploy that 96 million.
Thank you.
Tom, you had your hand.
I just had a quick question. I didn't understand your question, Dusty. Are you implying that there would need to be an increase in the state and the town sales tax in order to create the money?
No, I'm
for
just
that? Or
trying to
you
figure
saying-
out what percentage of 1% of our sales tax is going to get dedicated to this. Because right now, general fund, we've got kind of everything obligated. So where's that half cent or a little less than half cent coming from?
The next agenda item will be talking about the utility rates, but we were talking about a water resource fee when we had the work session on October 15th. But we'll be talking about that. We are
Is that gonna
recommending
offset all of
delaying
it?
that.
Would that offset all of it or part of it?
That was the intention, that it would offset the full
Okay.
amount.
Other questions? Public comment?
I have none.
No public comment. Okay. I guess,
We have some discussion, maybe.
yeah, after we have to have a motion. You want to make the motion and we'll.
Not on this one. I'll pass. I appreciate the offer. No.
Let's see.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I've lost my spot here.
We're on number 5.
5, yeah.
Move to approve resolution number 2025-27, resolution number 2025-28, and resolution number 2025-29.
Second? Okay, now it's done.
I'm fully in favor of this program. I think that it's essential to our town. It's wet water that we don't have. It is endorsed by the governor and the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And therefore, it's reason enough to go forward in Cave Creek. 90% dependent on Colorado River water, under threat of losing 20 to 25 or more percent of it. We have no options. I would like to see us do a blend of different types of funding options. So I think we need to discuss that further. But right now, I'm all in favor.
Yeah, this is just the exploratory phase, so we're not obligating ourselves to anything here. This is part of the investigative process, the due diligence you do anytime you consider doing a deal. And so we need this information, whether it's an up or down, we need the information, know what the options are. So how we actually get the funds to cover the interest and principal payment, that's for another meeting. That's for later on, when the smoke starts to clear a little bit. And this whole process is quite foggy. We don't even know what the cut is, and we're 14 months away from a cut that I've heard varies from 0 to 100%. 100%, we're in deep trouble. But okay, so other comments?
Yeah, I'd still like to
Tom?
get on record here. I know the council supports this, and in fact, it's a staff recommendation. I just want to clarify a couple of things, that what this money is allocated for is for an acre of land in the Harquahala Valley. Doesn't bring you the wet water. It brings you the ability to obtain the wet water with the affiliation of the organization. And then the other still unidentified or at least not specified costs that come with getting the water from the ground and through the Byzantine transportation process to the town of Cave Creek. So I do know I'm a minority position on this issue for a variety of reasons. Everything, of course, in public policy is timing. And in an ideal world, what I wish we would have had on this was more time, and there isn't, and it's not realistic to expect it or to request it. But yet the irony exists that the staff is currently looking to put RFPs out to test the private sector's interest in privatizing the water companies here in Cave Creek. So although this is, you could say visionary or forecasting or anticipatory or anything you want to describe this as a positive investment for the future, if we had the answer to the RFPs and the process to selling the water companies and using that asset value for other priorities in the town, this might take on a different complexion. But we don't have that, and we requested the delay and we didn't get the delay. So the gun is to the town's head in terms of not only the escrow monies, which I'm assuming have been provided, but also the performance money, which is due coming up as well. And right during or prior to the town's ability to take a look publicly at whether it's a viable option to privatize the water companies or not. I'm here to be a nuisance, not out of disrespect or to be disagreeable. I'm really only the historical mensch who's speaking this evening to again advise you that at some point, the relationship between how much money this town puts into water, wet water, paper water, future water, whatever, has got to address the fact that we're a town of 5,000 or 5,500 people. And with how much we have historically spent on the old J. George Water Company, not to mention the sewer adventures we've had over the years, takes on a feeling that we don't proportionally understand what is a fair price to provide water to a portion of the population. And with the 11 million commitment and the transfer of the 11 million to the investment fund that's put this together, what if the town decides to privatize the water company in 2026? I don't know how this plays into that schedule. So I get the fact of timing and decision-making and policy direction, but at some point, I guess the cautionary note that I'm suggesting or requesting is that with the amount of money that Sean needs in the next few months, or even the next year, for maintenance improvement and maintenance compliance, and then the never-ending reminder of water system failure, which is not a reflection on the town or the staff or the council. We bought the old J. George Water Company with iron pipes and all the other blemishes that we don't know about. Even the gasoline plume under downtown Cave Creek, which temporarily shut the well, which now is back open. So maybe down the line, there can be a conversation under another topic to talk about, is existentially this the best way to go in terms of water, when the water companies, if they have an interest, actually bring wet water with the negotiation they could provide the town. So I'm not recommending, and I'm not saying that I certainly have any answers. It's just that we are making commitments that are expensive in a long pattern of spending large amounts of money for a town of 5,000 and a subset of that part of the town that don't have domestic wells. And at some point, we may want to say or take a look at enough is enough. Of all the things we need to prioritize, we don't have our own trash company here in town. There's just some things that the private sector would seem to do better. So I apologize for the eternal annoyance that this discussion offers, but I just want to remind people about what the town didn't have until we acquired it. And it's been a problem child, for lack of another metaphor, ever since. And now we're providing paper water, and maybe it will produce wet water at some later point. But the real issue is not where we're getting our water, it's how we're getting it, what we're paying for it. 20 to 30,000 an acre foot in the future, the near future, just seems mind-bending compared to how much we used to spend for an acre foot of water in Arizona. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Other comments?
So, first of all, I didn't know there was another mensch up here besides me as an MOT, but if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Anyway, the bigger gamble, in my opinion, was the Bartlett Lake Dam expansion, which we put down, I believe, 200,000 towards the earnest money, which we cannot receive that money back if we decide to go forward with that. But this was, I believe, 100, and I understand it went down to 50 through some negotiations, and we can get the entire thing back January 15th. We are between a rock and a hard place right now. As Councilwoman Royer had stated at the last meeting, there's been at least 20, 30 years of just foolishness on past councils that we should have had this resolved a long time ago, but we didn't. And right now we do have a gun to our head, and I don't see any other choice but to go forward with this.
Other comments?
I also think, oh, I'm sorry,
Oh.
Cynthia. We are going through a very extensive due diligence process. None of us are going into this lightly. We're doing our extensive investigations of everything related to it. So our lawyers are on board, our consultants are on board. We're investigating every single aspect of this deal. So we're doing the responsible thing as elected town council members, and that is to provide for the future of our town in terms of its water supply. Mr. Augerton is not on the town's water supply. He does not have skin in the game. It's different for him and Mr. Rhodes. So that's an important distinction. We really all should be thinking about every single resident on the water system, whether we're on a well or not, because our property values depend on it. I mentioned in the last meeting, I'm being asked by residents who have beautiful multi-million-dollar homes, should I sell? Because they're afraid of the future of our water supply. This is the solution. This is the only solution. And Cave Creek is lucky to be in line for it. We worked hard for it. We met with the governor. We met with the director of the Department of Water Resources. We've gone to Central Arizona Project. We have talked with everyone. And you know what we concluded after all of those meetings? We're on our own. Nobody is saving us. We are on our own. And so it's our decision to make. And we made it 5-2. And we, like Joe mentioned, we have a way to get out of it if necessary. If we find things that are disconcerting that we can't live with. So I believe that this is the best decision for our town.
Cynthia.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree that the town has a very challenging timeline to deal with the water supply and augmentation issues. And no one knows this better than the staff who's been working diligently trying to find us options and find us information. Personally, I don't have a firm opinion on the best course of action, but I consider this resolution to be a step in the right direction to at least start the process to get funding for water augmentation if that is our choice. I think we still need a lot of data and a lot of analysis to determine if a potential sale to a private entity is in the best interest of the town as opposed to further water augmentation. But at least we're keeping that safe timeline moving forward.
Other comments?
One other comment. I think that we also need to think about if we do sell one or more parcels of our water utility, what's the possibility of selling this allocation? I wouldn't think that that would be impossible. People are standing in line looking for water. So if we don't need it in the future, I believe there will be options for us.
If I could address that.
Yes.
With respect to Harquahala Water, the decision in order to transfer it from one place to another is given to the community. And so you wouldn't be able to sell the Harquahala Water to another community. You could sell it as part of the asset for the dispensation of the water companies. If you're getting rid of them, then they would have assets and they should have more value. But you have to keep in mind that you have to transfer that water only to you and to use it in your community.
But that's viable.
Yes, yeah, but I just want to make sure that you don't think you can just go sell it to somebody
Right.
else.
We can't put it on the market.
There are restrictions in the deed
I'm sure.
for the water.
Okay, did we have public comment on this, Teresa?
I have no one wishing to speak. No
Okay,
cards.
good. I think I bypassed that. Any other comments before we vote?
You have no comments.
Sure.
You have no comments.
Oh, I've gotten lost. I forgot. Well, my comment is that this is no action. This is part of the investigation. If people want to know the answer, you've got to develop the options. And this is one of the options is the financing. Unfortunately, we have to proceed around about 20 parallel paths with a lot of different things at the same time. And it's a tremendous load on the staff. It's a tremendous load on the consultants, the lawyers, the people who are involved and have the best interest of the town to keep the town alive with water. I remind everybody, we're 14 months away from a cutback and we're 90% dependent on Colorado River. And not a single person I've ever asked that has come up with a better idea. Not a single person, even a viable idea. So that's my comment. And with that, we'll take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Arterton,
Nay.
Councilmember Driscoll,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedman,
Yes.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
No.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Yes. The motion passes 5-2. And we are on to item number 6, which is council discussion, possible approval regarding proposed increases to utility rates to proceed with statutory posting requirements and scheduling of a public hearing. Welcome,
Okay.
Kevin.
Hello.
We just play a little musical chairs up here. Okay, so we had the work session on the utility rates on October 15th. And at that work session, there were a couple things that council had requested that we change the top tier of the volume rates. Instead of being greater than 50,000 gallons for that top tier, changing it to greater than 40,000 gallons. And there was also a request to look at a seasonal rate structure. So we have that information for you tonight. There are also a couple other things that we included. There was a request to look at also an accelerated scenario for Desert Hills to get them closer to self-sufficiency. So in the work session, we had shown 6% revenue increases. And so there's also a scenario for the 10% increases. I believe you should have copies of the revised presentation that we did add some things here. So hopefully you have that. The other thing that we have changed in the presentation and what we're looking for approval for tonight is we're suggesting that we defer the water resource fee implementation. So you just heard in the last item about how there's a wide range of what this rate could end up being as far as how much we're paying for the Harquahala purchase, but also for other water resources. And what you would want to do is make sure that, because it's a very lengthy posting process, and you want to post for as much as you believe the rates might increase. If you increase the rates over and above what you posted, you have to start the posting process all over again. We would not be able to just go in and change it. If we were saying we were going to decrease compared to what we posted, that's totally fine. We're allowed to do any number of decreases that we may want to do, but we'd have to put the max of what it is. And because it's such a wide range of what that is, we thought it might be best to just delay and wait until we have more actual numbers in order to do that. Which means that we may start incurring some of those costs that we'll have to cover for a little while until the fee comes into place. But also the way the fee would be addressed. So we were looking at an option of a monthly additional fee that would be charged on the bill for water resources. And it takes over time, month by month by month, of accumulating that money to actually help pay for the debt service. So we were already looking at having to kind of float some of that to begin with. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Kevin. These are the revenue projections of what we were looking at.
Right. Thanks, Sherry. So this is what we were looking at before. As Sherry said, there's only the two options for the Cave Creek water system now. The no water resource costs included in the financial plan, and then a financial plan that does have the water resource costs in it, but we do not have a separate water resource fee. So we're looking at a 3-year snapshot right now. As I think we discussed last time, the further we get away from today, the more things change and the cloudier the projections get. So we wanted to zero in on the next 3 years, which is where we have more confidence. So if you can see on the top chart there, so that's the no water resource cost. So there's no water resource projects included in this CIP. We'd be looking at a 6% increase, a 6% increase, and then a 5% increase. We have had general fund subsidies in the past to the Cave Creek Water Utility. We're projecting that would go on through 2027. But then by 27, 28, we're not projecting the need for any general fund subsidies in this scenario. We've got the debt service coverage numbers there. So the 1.2 times is what we're targeting. That's the legal requirement. So we're meeting that. And then you can see the end of year cash balance is built up over time under the top plan. And then moving down to the bottom plans, we have 6% increases for the next 3 years. We do continue to have that general fund subsidy, as Sherry just mentioned, because we do not have that dedicated water resource fee charge, some of the options that we were looking at. So in that case, we would need general fund support throughout the entire 3-year period that we're looking at in order to maintain the debt service coverage requirement as well as keep the cash balance positive. But both of these plans do put the Cave Creek Water Utility on the path of no longer needing general fund subsidies as we progress into the future. On Desert Hills, we have two options now. We only had one option previously. It was the top option there, the 6% every year. We had a general fund loan on the Desert Hills side, so the financial plan calls for those loans to be repaid over time. Which is a little bit different on the Cave Creek side. They were subsidies. On the Desert Hill side, they're loans, and those loans would get paid back. So we do have the 6% increases followed by some general fund loans. We're meeting our debt service coverage every year, and then we start to accumulate a positive fund balance. Option B down below. So this was based on discussions from our last meeting where we wanted to take a little bit more of an aggressive approach to the Desert Hills system. Get off the general fund loans faster, be able to repay the loans faster. So in that case, we would have 3 10% increases. And then we've got the debt service coverage there, and we've got the positive fund balance on the Desert Hills system as well, and we can start paying back the loan. So in this case, as was the case with the Cave Creek system, this would get us on a path where there would no longer need to be general fund loans to the Desert Hills system. It would be self-sustaining.
What's the $500,000 in there on that slide? A general fund loan, 500,000. You increase it from 6 to 10, and the general fund loan only goes down to 500,000.
So it would go down to 500,000 in that 1 year. The prior, under the 6% option, we would need general fund loans every year. So if we do the 10% increase, then we could get by with just one general fund loan in 25, 26, and then there would no longer be any additional loans necessary.
So they'd be self-sustaining in 26.
Correct. 26, 27, yes.
Right.
Yes, correct. On the Cave Creek wastewater side, so we kept with just one option for that, a 6%, a 6%, and a 5%. So again, there's going to be the general fund subsidy necessary. So the balancing act that we were trying to get to there was meeting the 1.20 times debt service coverage. And then the end of year cash is positive on that front too. As we discussed last time, the Cave Creek wastewater system is going to require general fund subsidies for this foreseeable future based on 6% and 5% rate increases.
Does that include the half-cent sales tax?
It's been removed. So this no longer includes the half-cent sales tax in the
So
financial.
we're still, the half-cent sales tax is going into the general fund?
Correct.
And then
And
essentially
so-
going back as a subsidy.
Okay, so cash to cash, the half-cent sales tax is bringing in about 2 million, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Which was how the wastewater system was designed with that as a
Correct.
permanent subsidy.
Correct.
Thanks.
So these are some of the rate structure scenarios. We discussed some changes last time. So these are the changes that we made based on our last meeting. So the one suggestion was to remove the top tier from 50,000, drop that down to 40,000 to try and encourage some conservation. There was also some discussion about a summer rate versus a winter rate. So that when people are using more water in the summer, we recognize that there's a higher cost of water in the summer, and try and encourage again some more conservation. So we lowered the top tier to 40,000 gallons across the board. And then we also added a seasonal rate structure for all of both the Cave Creek water and the Desert Hills water options. And then the Desert Hills water, we've got different rates depending upon whether or not we go with the 6% option or the 10% option.
So on the slides that Kevin will be going through, it'll say revised current. That's basically the ones where it's without the seasonal change.
So here we have the monthly base charge. So as we discussed last time, there is a boosted rate. So some customers pay an additional fee every month because there's additional costs associated with them. Staff did an analysis during the course of this rate study. It used to be about $11 a month for Cave Creek water customers for the boosted rate. It's now gone up to about $15 based on staff's review of costs. So that's what we've got reflected here. So then as Sherry mentioned, so this is the Cave Creek volume rates. So this is what we're calling the revised current. It's still the annual. So these rates would be in effect for the entire year, regardless of whether it was January or July. These are the rates you would pay. So we made the one change that we discussed last time. We broke that first tier into two, so 0 to 4,000 and then 4,000 to 10,000. The 0 to 4,000 being more of a lifeline rate or a low income rate, if you will. And then we've got the upper tier now kicks in at 40,000 gallons as opposed to the over 50,000 that we're at today. So all the tiers here, we're seeing an increase there to generate the additional revenue. We also increased the rates going forward in the upper tiers to try and encourage some conservation. So you can see right now, if you're in the 30 to 50,000 range, you would pay $11.31 per thousand. Under this new rate structure, if you were 30 to 40, you would pay $11.41. So a little bit of an increase there. But once you hit that 40,000 gallon mark, you're going to jump up from the $11.31 to $20.53 per thousand, which we're hoping will encourage some conservation and save some of the water resources that we need.
In your work with other towns, have you seen rate structures that actually did work in improving conservation? And if so, what are the characteristics?
So it's this type of rate structure that we have here. The effectiveness varies from community to community. In all honesty, the primary one where we see the most conservation is a rate structure where previously there was an allowance within the monthly base charge. So you paid your monthly base charge and that included the first 5,000 gallons. Because it was included in the base charge, there was no incentive for you to not use more water than you needed to. You were paying for 5,000 anyways. In situations where we've gone away from that and said you start paying from gallon one, or we reduce it from 5,000 to 3,000, we see a lot of conservation in that first tier. And then as we get into these higher tiers, the middle ones, not so much. What we would consider domestic or indoor water use, we don't really see a whole lot of conservation there. Getting into the what I would consider, block 3 under the new rate structure, the 10 to 20,000, you're going to see a little bit of conservation there, but people are still wanting to irrigate their lawns. They're still wanting to wash their cars, so they're going to do that still. Once you get into that 20 and higher, that's when you're starting to see more conservation. You tend to see it more in the 20 to 30 to 30 to 40. Once you're at 40,000 gallons and above, that's an awful lot of water use for a single family home to use. So in the majority of cases, you might see some conservation, some savings in there. But if you're using that much water to begin with, often the case is that the price does not matter too much. So you will see some conservation, but you will not see drastic, you won't see a 10 or 15 or 20% drop in water usage in that upper tier. It will help some, and you might see a 5% reduction. But generally speaking, you're not going to see big changes in that upper tier.
Do we know how many houses in Cave Creek are using above 40,000?
We do. We do have that in a subsequent slide.
Okay.
And then we have the commercial rates too. So again, the same type of thing. We made the max at 40,000 for commercial as opposed to the 50,000 it is today. The common area and commercial irrigation, the commercial pools. And then this is the second rate structure, the new one that we developed based on communications with the council at the last meeting. So we went back and took a look at the billing data, looked at the monthly water use to try and figure out when do we start to see that spike for the summer period and when do we see it start to come back down. So October through April is what we're considering our off-peak or winter type period, with May through September being where things really start to peak up again. And then they start to come down again in October. So under this rate structure, we assumed the 0 to 4,000, the 4,000 to 10,000. That's primarily going to be your indoor water use, you're washing your clothes, doing dishes, preparing dinner, taking showers. So we kept them the same under the winter period and the summer period. But then once you get into that third tier, the 10,000 to 20,000, we're starting to incrementally ratchet up how much you would pay for water use during the summer period, again, to try and encourage conservation during that period, shave off the peak a little bit, bring the peak down, and conserve some of our water resources. And then we took the same approach for all the other customer classes as well. So the commercial class, again, higher rates in the May through September period. And again, common area and irrigation, the pools as well. So then moving on to Desert Hills, so looking at the base charge. So again, we've got the two options for Desert Hills. The first one reflects the 6% increase plan. Option B represents the 10% increase plan. So that's why there's a little bit of a difference in the base charges here. Again, staff looked at what the actual boosted cost was for Desert Hills customers. So where it was, again, about $11 a month currently, based on the analysis that $11 couldn't be supported, the actual cost was just under $2. So that's the reduction that we're seeing in the boosted rates on the Desert Hills side. So then we have option A, the revised current. So I'll try and frame these because they're going to get a little bit confusing potentially. So again, option A, this is keeping the rate structure as it is. So you would pay the same rates in January as you would in July, as you would in August. And this is at the 6% rate increase plan. So this is what the rates would look like for a residential customer in Desert Hills under a 6% revenue increase and maintaining the same rates throughout the entire year. And then we've got the commercial class. So same story, 6% revenue increase, maintaining the same rates for the entirety of the year for the commercial class. Option B, so this would be looking at the 10% revenue increase for the next 3 years. Again, the revised current, so these rates would be in effect for the entire year. It's just the 10% increase instead of the 6%. The same with the commercial, so 10% increases for the 3 years. Same rate structure for the entire year. And then moving into the seasonal. So we're back to option A. So again, this is the 6% plan for Desert Hills. Again, the first 2 tiers are going to be the same for residential, whether it's in the summer period or the winter period. That's our indoor, our domestic water use. But then once we move into tier 3, where we're getting into discretionary and outdoor water use, the rates are incrementally higher in the summer to try and encourage conservation and reduce peak usage. Same approach for the commercial. And then looking at option B, so same premise, but again, this is with the higher rate increases. So the 10% as opposed to the 6%. We keep the first 2 tiers, the domestic indoor water use, the same year round. And then as you get into tier 3, the summer rates would be higher during May through September. Same thing for commercial.
I don't know about everybody else. We're going through it so fast, I cannot form any judgments. Are we going to make a choice between these things?
Yes,
Where-
and I'm going to have scenarios for you
Okay.
as soon as Kevin finishes this of what it looks like on a customer perspective, which I think is more helpful for you to choose.
And then moving on to wastewater. So we're not proposing any changes to the wastewater rate structure as it is today. We're just applying the revenue increases that were identified in the financial plan. And then I think this is where Sherry was headed with, it might make more sense looking at it from this perspective.
So on this slide here, so we're looking at the change to the top tier being over 40,000. And this is looking at seasonal. So this is looking at winter rates. So these are actual customers that we found to use as samples of what is a low usage, average, high usage, very high usage customer. These are the same customers that I had used in the comparisons for the October 15th work session. So on the low usage side, so this is a customer that's using about 2,400, likely not to have much change in what their water usage is between winter and summer. And so currently, under the current rate structure, they're paying about $75 a month. And with the proposed change, it would go up to about $78 a month, which is a 3% increase that they would be seeing on this.
Plus the $8 fee.
So we're recommending deferring the water resource fee at this point in
Okay.
time, but when we do have final numbers to be able to come forward with that, it would be in addition to this, yes. And then I do have the note at the bottom, and actually I think when I was pulling customers, I think there was only one of these customers actually connected to wastewater, so it's not applicable to everyone, but the wastewater increases on the residential side. It's a flat amount paid for the sewer system. And the increase is $5 a month more, or 6% compared to what they're paying now. On the average use customer, so this customer uses about 13,000 gallons a month. Currently, their bill would be about $120 a month. And under these rates, it would go up to about $124 a month, or a 4% increase. And this is just with these without a water resource fee again. The high usage customer, so this is one that's over 50,000, about 54,000 gallons a month. Under the current rate structure, the bill is about $560 a month. It would go up to about $650 a month for this customer, and a 17% increase. The very high usage customer, and I did not pick the very highest. We have some that are even significantly higher than this, but this was kind of sort of a middle of the road of all of these very, very high usage customers at not quite 200,000 gallons a month. The current bill.
Is that residential?
Yes.
This is a residential that uses almost an acre foot a month?
We have plenty that use quite a bit more than that. Yes. So current bill at about $3,300 a month. And under the proposal for the winter usage, that would go up to about $3,900 a month, or a 19% increase. And then the next slide is basically the same customers, but just applying summer rates instead of winter rates. So for the low usage customer, as I mentioned before, it wouldn't change whether it's winter or summer for them. So it's still a 3% increase. The average usage customer is only seeing slight of a 4% increase. The high usage customer is seeing more of an increase, going from the 560 to about 680, a 21% increase. and the very high usage customer going from about the 3,300 to 4,100, or a 24% increase. So the more water they're using, the more they're seeing of that. So when Kevin talked about having a 6% revenue increase, that's looking at a revenue target and how much revenue we need to generate in order to cover our costs, because as a governmental entity, we're not making a profit. We're only allowed to cover our costs. And then it's how do you split that amount of revenue that needs to be generated across all the customers. And so this is putting more of the burden on those who use more water. So here is a look at the residential customers of where they're at. So we actually have a lot of customers that are in that lowest tier, the 0 to 4,000. That's 675 customers that would be in that tier. Those that jump into the 4,000 to 10,000 tier, that's 592 customers. Those that are going into the next tier, 10,000 to 20,000, is 458 customers. So the majority, the vast majority of the customers are in those first three tiers. Then we drop down quite a bit. So those who go into the 20 to 30,000 gallon tier, that's 122 customers. And then 30,000 to 40,000 gallons, that's 60 customers. And those that are greater than 40,000 gallons, that's 56 customers.
So what's the highest usage? Just for curiosity.
That tile.
Ironically, our wastewater plant usually is in the top 3. We're gonna see the bill increase. There is one property owner who has a very considerable usage, on Grapevine has some accounts up there, using a lot of water, we need to talk to them. And there's a couple restaurants actually, commercial. This is residential customers, yeah.
Well, the commercial I understand, but residential customer using more than 40,000 gallons. I mean, that's insane. That's more than, I agree with Bob. That's what, an acre foot?
Well, 198,000 is 10 or 11 acre feet a year. At 22,000 per acre foot, that's $220,000 to buy the right to use that per year. That's a tremendous load.
That'd be the gentleman who has 200 acres and the biggest horse facility and ponds, and who lives just south of us. The car dealer who.
Well, we may not want to talk about specifics.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying person. I just know who it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like that's problematic.
Yeah.
Particularly as we're facing, massive shortages here shortly.
We need to talk to this guy.
We need to talk to anybody that's over 40,000 gallons, commercial customers.
And there's a difference between commercial and residential in my view, because the problem in Arizona is outdoor water use. And I've said this,
When you're that high, it's highly unlikely that you're using that much water indoor.
Mhm.
The indoor it ends in that 4,000 to 10,000 tier typically.
Do you know how many gallons there are in everybody using in the people use the 200 or 220 people using 20,000 plus? If you have an idea how many gallons that is? I mean, how much opportunity? I'm looking for how much opportunity there is to conserve in that. If you don't have it, just say you don't have it. That's right.
No.
I can run that analysis. I don't have it with me tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so the next slide is looking at the commercial customers and those tiers. So we were not doing a lifeline tier for businesses. We left it at the 0 to 10,000. That is the most significant there, the 111 customers. Then there are 32 commercial customers in the next tier, 13 customers in the next, 17 in the next, and 28 in the greater than 40,000. So I would say it really depends upon the type of business as far as how much water usage is needed for a particular business. Because if you're just an office, it's going to be a different situation than, say, a restaurant. Restaurants are going to use a lot more water than an office is.
So these high use people with 28, those are likely very successful restaurants in many cases.
I would say there's probably a good chance that's who some of those are in there.
The other thing is we recover some of that water because it goes in the sewer system and then put to the golf course. If they didn't use it, we would have to put Central Arizona Project water over there. So, and that brings me to the point here is that there's very little, there's not the potential to make more water through conservation for commercial customers because it's outdoor water. It's the people that, you know, use 75% more water in July when we have 20% of the people are gone and the restaurants are not doing anything than we do in January when the place is humming. So the real issue is what do these rates have on conservation? Because that is, we're trying to steer things so that we lower the peak, we shave the peak in the summer, and we lower the water use so we don't have to pay so much money for it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So moving on to Desert Hills. So this is looking at the option A was the 6% revenue increase. And this is for the winter usage. So again, these are the same sampling of customers that we had talked about in the October 15th work session. The low usage customer, so about 2,800 gallons, because of the decrease in the boosted rates. And you'll notice that it was hard for me to even find customers in Desert Hills that weren't on boosted rates. All of these are on boosted rates. So that's why they're seeing some decrease because they move into the Lifeline water usage rate and they get a lower base fee. So their amount would decrease 7%, going from $112 a month to $104 a month. The average usage customer at about 15,000 gallons, going down just slightly at the 2%, partly because of that base fee decrease and then just the adjustment with the tiers. So going from about 200 to about $196 a month. The high usage customer, so this one was 44,000. So in the wintertime, seeing a 1% increase from the $641 a month to $647 a month. But when we move over to summertime rates, then the low usage customer stays the same at a 7% decrease. The average usage customer sees an increase of 1%. And the high usage customer sees a 9% increase, going from the $641 a month to $697 a month. So the option B, which is the 10% increases. So this is looking at winter rates. So the low usage customer would see a 6% drop instead of the 7%. So going from 112 to about 106. The average usage customer would be about flat at 199. The high usage customer going from the $641 to $657, a 2% increase. And then moving to the summer rates under this 10% revenue scenario. So the low usage customer stays the same at the 6% decrease. The average usage customer goes up 2% from the 199 to 204 a month. The high usage customer sees a 10% increase from the 641 to the 707 a month.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? And I kind of want to ask you, what professionally do people recommend as how to price water to where it creates a true disincentive to conserve? Because, I mean, what's interesting here is we subsidize water in so many different ways, but we're lowering the rate, which kind of gives the impression that water is affordable, when in fact, we're just increasing the subsidization cost. And then at 2%, it's a pretty minor increase. But at 10%, if you're over the 44,000 gallons, is this what you, Bob, are looking at in terms of a matrix that recognizes almost preternatural usage of water for domestic purposes? I mean, what is a reasonable number in a town with all the realities that you asked earlier about? Is that a credible surcharge when you get above that amount of water? In other words, the algorithm that's being proposed here doesn't seem to be attention getting per se. I find it curious that the water would ever go down in cost, but then I also understand that low income users truly this is a problem at a time of inflation. But it is a mixed message, it seems like.
Well, it's the reason it's going down, which as I understand it, is because they were on the boosted rate. Is that right?
Yes.
And so it's a more accurate allocation of costs, because this whole thing is a cost allocation process.
Correct.
Kevin, maybe you ought to take it from here.
Sure. Yeah. So what the mayor's saying is correct. So the purpose of the cost of service analysis that we go through is assigning the cost to the respective customers based on their usage and the demand that they placed on the system. So when we originally did the boosted rates, there was that justification for the $15. That was, I don't remember how many years ago, Sean, 2015. So as part of the update this time around, Sean went back and looked at all the costs and the different pieces. So we wanted to make sure that we were reflecting the accurate cost, which is why the boosted rate went down for these Desert Hills customers. And then taking that a step further, we have different rates for the commercial class versus the residential class versus the pool class. And that's based on how those customers use the system, their peaking periods, how much water they use, how many customers there are. All those factors go into the analysis to assign the cost to the different customer classes.
Okay, just one more follow-up. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
I was just wanting to add one other thing that I think might help clarify some of this. So at least in the last rate study, and maybe even in the one before, I know that there was an effort of saying Desert Hills needs to not be relying on Town of Cave Creek to subsidize it. And so there were greater rate increases done over time for Desert Hills than there were for Cave Creek customers. So that's part of why you're not seeing quite as significant of an increase in these, because they've already experienced a lot of those increases.
Okay, I think I remember that, Mr. Mayor. I think I remember that from a previous meeting. I
That
guess
was
the
2
question I
years.
just wanted to ask one more.
2 years ago.
Is, sorry?
That was 2 years ago. We jacked up Desert Hills to
Yeah,
cover the
I think
cost.
you precipitated maybe that discussion. So I just want to ask the question is, if you're over 44,000, you're considered a high use customer. But I don't know if people have horses or other agricultural, what's reasonable per se. But what would ordinarily trigger a penalty or a disincentive charge to go through your water usage, do an audit and make a conscious change? Because 10% doesn't seem as if it's going to divert water usage habits. And of course, in the upper income households here in town, it's just a cost of doing business. But do you feel, or does anybody feel that this is a credible funding formula for water conservation? And it's only based on usage, but is there ever a triggering mechanism that if you are using more than 40,000 per month, that if we're going to do a percentage of higher cost of usage, is that adequate, or should there be? I know you're wanting to put the user fee in at 26, but
I would say it's also in combination with an education campaign, because the education campaign probably has more impact even than what the rate increases are.
Well, the other option is to throttle back on the water. You just cut back when they hit a certain amount. Sorry, you're done for the day.
I don't know what's reasonable, but they do it with the internet, what Councilmember Rhodes just said, but 10%, and I'm not advocating more than 10%. I'm just saying, are we missing something that could, besides education, that could say, unless you really have a reason to be using that much water, which would be maybe agricultural or equine, or I don't know.
I can't imagine.
Okay,
I
I
have
don't
no
think 10%
idea.
is a disincentive.
This process has gotten so much better than the first one. The first one, we didn't have any cost control. We didn't have any cost accounting. And the cost accounting's been improved. The major change this year is the boosted water. They've actually gone out and measured the electricity rather than just doing an engineering calculation on the back of an envelope. So it's getting better every single year.
The value is,
And it's getting more fair because this is supposed to fairly allocate costs around. And then, of course, the tiers, that's where you send your message on conservation is, hey, if you're if you're a low income person using less than 4,000 or a high income person using less than 4,000, you're gonna get a real break. And the people using a lot of water are going to be paying basically for some of your water. And
So I do have a question. We have 40 customers that are above 200,000 a month, going back to that one slide you had.
Going back to Cave Creek water, do you want to see Desert Hills water? Is that
I'd
the
like
next
to see
slide?
both.
So the next couple of slides, so we have for residential customers for Desert Hills. So they have,
So we have 80 some odd customers, whatever Cave Creek's number, that are using 1,000 acre feet a year.
so
Yeah, 56.
there's 56 customers that are over the 40,000
Okay, so
gallons in Cave Creek. And then in Desert Hills, it's 44 customers over the 40,000.
So how many are above whatever the 200, you mentioned there were some people that were above 200,000? Do we have numbers on those? I mean,
I can get them.
that's crazy numbers. I mean, there seems to be a simpler mechanism here too. If you're gonna be using, 2 acre feet a year, I think maybe, or 2 acre feet a month, maybe we're gonna cut you to half of that. So you hit your certain allocation and we throttle back. I mean, have you guys taken a look at anything like that?
So one of the things that we looked at was what if we had the top tier greater than 30,000? But you were seeing, because when you don't have a lot of,
I'm not talking about jacking up their rates. I'm talking about throttling back the amount of water they can get above a certain amount a day.
I would say that would be in Sean's department.
There are actually some jurisdictions who, through conservation, have actually given customers bonuses. One example we looked into is actually in California, where they go out with their customers and actually give them a yearly annual bonus. And if they go over that and they don't throttle back after being notified 3 times, they'll actually go put a reducer on. So effectively, they will reduce your water usage at your meter, and they'll actually put a reducer at that meter, so you can't use that much water anymore until you comply. So there are cases to do that. We could do that. It would require us physically. Our meters won't allow us to do it. We can report it. We have to physically go out to the meter and actually put basically a little washer on the meter to actually throttle the flow through the meter itself to do that.
So how many meters would we have to do that on?
Well, it depends on where we want to set it at. An acre foot for a year on average is like 27,000. So anybody over 30,000 gallons who want to do that, we'd have to take a look at that. And we do it by case basis. Who's using what water. The one good thing about the new AMI metering system that we have is that any of the anomalies we're catching very quickly, because we look at it on a weekly basis, who's got high water usage, so we're catching things like leaks and all that stuff. But
I mean, given the dire water situation that you keep on telling us about, I would think we want to take a look at some measures like that where we, just say, hey, look, I appreciate the fact that you're using this much water, knock it off.
Do we have any idea about the legalities concerning this if we cut people's water back?
Well, currently, meters have been placed since 21. December 21 is when the new policy got put in place. They actually have a water service contract with the town for half an acre foot. Before that, we don't have that. So we do have a disjoint in that type of system. We know who those meters, the new meters that have been set. It's actually not existing accounts. It's a new account. It's actually new meters that were set after 21 is how the policy got put in place. We have looked at that too and started to talk about going after those property owners within at least that time frame from December 21 when we put that water resource policy in place. I think we need to think a little broader and look at everybody out there. And then really, I think our conservation efforts should be focused on these higher water users. It got brought up about the commercial users. I do think there is some opportunities to work with the commercial users. Some of it is outdoor use, very limited, but some of the indoor, they might be able to do better management practices. How you wash your dishes, how you clean them off, not using as much water, things like that. And interior fixtures in some of our restaurants, I think, can be updated to be more efficient. But that's going to require capital updates on the commercial side. So we have to make a decision as a water provider want to encourage that by incentivizing that, by having programs to help pay for and offset those, or do we just require them to do that and point that out? So that's part of our overall water conservation efforts that we're trying to get put together.
Sounds like staff needs to look into this and see what our options are going forward, because this is 14 months away, as the mayor pointed out earlier.
I mean, even, we still are gonna have problems getting water out of Pyramid or other places. So, right, where we've got it currently stored, I know we're gonna do some trades and things. But, you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. We ought to be prepared for that contingency to take a look at what are our options? What are other options to kind of force people to go on a diet?
Tom?
Sean, do you know if there are communities in Arizona that have placed physical limits on the amount of water people are using rather than putting a financial incentive?
No, we actually were one of the first when we put the 21 water policy in place that put a physical restriction of the half acre foot. A lot of other jurisdictions don't do that, but there's some places like, you've met Brad Hill before. Brad actually was up in Flagstaff for a number of years. Their highest tier rate is, I think, under 20,000, like 18,000. Above that, they actually have it. So they actually have more condensed tiers. So you pay considerably more above that.
But they're not physically saying this is the amount of.
The other one I've just seen it, Phoenix for a number of years, and I just don't know if they still did it for people who got behind on their water bills, actually put the restrictors on to basically give people a lifeline water so they could do their dishes and stuff, but they couldn't use any more of that until they got current with their bills. They were doing that for a number of years. I'm still not sure if they're continuing that practice, but I knew that Phoenix did that for some years. But that was tied to accounts, payments and accounts, not to water usage.
Yeah, that's a very different policy.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't pay to be the first one making these policies. So I don't want to put us into jeopardy, but I think, we have to look at all options.
Yeah,
I
a lot
think
of
we
other
also have to
communities have
protect
a lot
ourselves.
more mature, and they've been doing water conservation a lot longer, and they're working with this. Like some of the agencies that I've worked for, we worked with HOAs. If you have more typical communities that have homeowners associations where they'll have common areas, and you work with those common areas to try and reduce the water usage there. Cave Creek doesn't have those types of things to go after, so we have to be a little more diligent about that. And we do need to be, we have talked about, our utility advisory committee has actually brought up a lot of good suggestions as far as kicking off our water conservation efforts. But, we're trying to deal with that with staff resources of trying to deal with just the physical infrastructure. The upset last week, we're still dealing with that as far as, some customers that were impacted by that and other improvements we're trying to do to the system. So there's always something to keep us busy, but it has to be a priority of water conservation. The fact that we have the AMI meters has been a huge blessing for this town, be able to see that usage. And as we can get more repeater sites out there and be able to see the Desert Hills, more of the Desert Hills customers, I think that'll help us out as we expand that system. So,
Comments down here? Question going to?
I just have one more question, because I don't want to beat this horse to death, which we probably have, but what about a financial incentive? So if somebody's using 40,000 gallons and that they decrease by 10%, they would be offered a 10% decrease in their bill or an annual recognition. I mean, at 40,000, if they didn't use 4,000 gallons, it's not so much the money you're after the behavior patterns, it seems like. So instead of being punitive, maybe be incentive based. I don't know. I was looking at you because you kind of have made this an issue on a regular basis, and I keep thinking we need to be.
Well, I made the comment that the tiers up to 50,000, which we've had ever since we did the water, 10 years, the first one, which Kevin and I were has been a failure. I mean, I don't think it's really forced any conservation. I think Cynthia's idea to lower that top tier, and after she made it, I went and looked at Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Queen Creek, and two of those are at 30,000. Their top tier is 30,000. Lowering the top tier down pushes money on the people using a lot of water very quickly. And I think we have too many tiers. I think and Cynthia's idea was a good one to go to 40. But other people, we're still higher than everybody else. I mean, Flagstaff's 10 or 11.
I think it was 18. I think Brian told me.
Yeah, and the other ones are 20 to 30. So we probably, we'll be doing this again.
Yeah.
So we don't have to, and I don't think we can solve all the problems all at once. And if we do, it's best to give people some time. I mean, the person using that has got to, unless they're just running it on the ground, they got to change their landscaping or whatever they're doing. I don't know what it is, but it's going to take some time for them to make the adjustments. So the education part and giving them some help and and educating what the problem is.
I do think the meter changeouts, I do think really helped that. We actually had one customer, I remember specifically, it's actually on the edge of the Cave Creek system in Desert Hills, when we changed their meter out, It had not been reporting for a number of years. They didn't realize how much water they were using until they got their first couple of bills from us. And it's like, they came unglued talking to us, going, how are we using so much water? How did it change so much? Because their meter had actually failed. So they didn't know how much they were using. They were using 50,000 gallons a month, and they had lush landscaping. They didn't realize that they were using it because we weren't reporting it to them. So getting the meters corrected was a huge thing for the town to deal with on the Cave Creek side of the system. So
Does that mean certain houses have their own riparian area?
it got to that point in some cases.
Of course, my comment to that is, why didn't we catch them with using less water? That we ought to be catching people with broken water meters.
It's a challenge to
Administrative.
try and look at it on a month-to-month basis and what happens. So again, just doing the meter resets, the meters had been used past their useful life, and it was a good reset for us. I'm glad we were able to get that project done.
Hey, Sean, can you clarify what our allocation is, acre feet from the cap per month to the town?
So the town has two subcontracts for Colorado River water delivered through the Central Arizona project. The first is municipal and industrial, and that's the highest priority priority water. That's 2,228 acre feet of water. That's the one that we expect will have a 20 to 25% cut in January of 2025. That'll be reduced by. The other allocation that we have is called non-Indian agricultural water, NIA subcontract. That's a lower priority, and actually this upcoming year we can't order any of that, and that's 386 acre feet of water. Initially, when the town did the application over a decade ago for the NIA water, the application was for 1,300 acre feet. They actually finally gave it to us, and it was only 386 acre feet when we got it. So, but right now, as of next calendar year, they've said we can't order any of that water as part of what's going on statewide.
Thank you.
Are we ready to proceed with the presentation?
Are you still here, Sherry? Yeah. Yes, we are.
Okay, so on the Desert Hills residential customers, it's a little bit different in the first three tiers, but still the first three tiers are where the majority of those customers are. And it's the higher tiers where there's a lot fewer. Looking at the commercial customers, there are not that many within Desert Hills. So we've got 12 in that lowest. The next two tiers have 3 each. The 30 to 40,000 gallons is 2 customers and 1 customer over the 40,000. So not very many there. This did not change from the work session of what we're calculating for the bulk water rates to charge Desert Hills. So the calculation that we do is to treat and deliver NIA water, and then we charge them for what we pay. So what we pay CAP is charged directly to Desert Hills for NIA. The M&I water is when we pay it, it is paid out of Cave Creek water. So this is selling the water, treating the water, and delivering the water to Desert Hills in that rate. And so those went up quite significantly, 23 and 21%. So this is looking at the comparison of where we stand. I think the only one I think got added on here was maybe Wickenburg that wasn't on the October 15th slide. You'll see on the left-hand side the comparison to a lot of the other municipalities going up through Fountain Hills, and then you get into Cave Creek, what our current rate is, and then looking at the different scenarios for Cave Creek and Desert Hills. And the only one that you see in the midst of all of those numbers there is Carefree. This is with the assumption of about 11,000 gallons a month, which is about average. And so we dominate the right-hand side of the chart with all the different scenarios that we've got available for you.
Fountain Hills, that's EPCOR's rate?
Yes.
Mhm. And then this is comparison on the sewer bills. And other than updating our rates, I don't think this changed compared to the October 15th. Actually, I don't think it changed at all
No.
because we didn't change any of the assumptions. So this is the same here with Cave Creek being the highest of the ones that are listed.
Question, Mayor. For the cities and towns rates that you've shown here, are any of those utility costs subsidized through property tax or other revenues, or are they determined on the same methodology that we are looking at utility rates for Cave Creek?
So that's the challenge when we try and put these together, is that we can find out the rates themselves, but we don't know how old the system is, how aggressive they are in their capital improvement program, whether or not there's a general fund subsidy going on, whether or not they have capacity or impact fees that are offsetting some of the capital costs. All we are able to do is pull the rates themselves. So I don't have a good answer to your question of whether or
So
not any of
not
these are subsidized.
necessarily apples to
They're-
apples.
It's probably not apples to apples is the answer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we had talked at the work session about, we're really recommending that we not go more than like 3 years on the rate increases to adopt. We feel like that we need to update rate study before then. There's a lot of things happening, and really feeling like we'd probably end up starting the next rate study not too long after this one gets put to bed, because of all the different changes and everything that are happening. In 2022, rate increases were adopted all the way through 2028. So the way these were calculated is assuming that those rate increases were not happening and using the rate increases that are proposed here. So it's not a duplication. So we would be rescinding the old ones and adopting these new ones. So our timeline here, so if we want to stick with an effective date of February 9th, then we really need to have some answers tonight on what direction council wants to go, so that we can have no later than the 7th, which is Friday. And so means Kevin's going to be putting in some hours to get the report all finalized. So the report you have in your packet is a draft, because we didn't know which scenario council might choose to go with. And so it would have to be no later than Friday. And then we'd have the public hearing and approval of the resolution adopting the rate increases January 6th in order to have an effective date of February 9th. So we need to know which scenarios you want to go with.
You're going to have to organize the decision-making point by point. What's decision A you need, decision B, and decision C. So start with whichever, maybe summer, winter is a good one to start with.
Yeah, and actually, I did want to mention, so I did look into whether or not Cassell can do seasonal rates. They can. It's not automatic. We'd have to make sure that we calendar it and do the changes between the different seasons. Just one more thing that I'm not real thrilled with Cassell on. And so it requires a little extra administrative burden doing the seasonal rates. The increases that we were looking at in the different scenarios, basically it'd be kind of a blend between the winter and summer increases is where you'd end up if you said, let's just forget the seasonality for now until we get a new system.
I'm going to make an assertion that I don't think there's enough difference between summer and winter to make any difference in consumption. The complications not worth the.
Not
anybody-
now.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
percentages didn't go up that much.
Yeah, they're almost the same. $22 versus 23.
So we
Split the difference.
we would look at making a bigger differential between winter and summer to make it worthwhile going through this, or just not doing the winter versus summer.
And the next rate study, so this was really intended to be an update costs. There was the integrated master plan that brought forth more capital improvement projects, and all those additional costs is really intended to be an update. The next rate study, and part of why I'm saying it probably needs to start not long after this is put to bed, is because I feel like we need to do like a wholesale look at the structure of like everything, all of the various components. But that lengthens the process in a rate study dramatically that we just did not have time for at this point. So we can definitely include that as part of what we look at in the next one.
You know, this is an ongoing process and it puts pressure on you. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know we have to take action. And we're getting the best information we can from you. We greatly appreciate that. We need to move forward. We need to be flexible. We have things like the potential likely cutbacks in water. So there's a lot that's going on. So, you know, I don't think that we should go forward with the winter versus summer rates.
I think everybody shook their head. We haven't heard from the utility advisory, and I know you guys have something to say on this whole scenario. So why don't we do that next before we address others?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Name is William Sullivan. I'm the chair of the Utilities Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, we got this recommendation, and it's actually not the recommendation you're getting today, last week. Many of the members attended the work session that was given to you. And so that was the first time we really got an eyeball about a month ago of what they were proposing. We did have a lot of questions when we got the proposal last week. Jerry simply didn't have the time to try to respond to the questions that we had. And so one of the things that we would ask that in the next go round, create a process that we can be involved in. And that means seeing the data that they're considering before they come up with recommendations to you. So we can have input right away. We never saw a cost of service study. We never saw what customers in each, were using what, so that we could help really define what rates should be proposed. So it's pretty important to keep us involved if you want a meaningful recommendation from the committee. Goes with the water resources too. We haven't been involved in that at all, as far as you've had executive sessions and things like that. We have not been provided any documentation other than what you've discussed in open meeting. And so if you want us to be involved and want our opinion on things, find a process that we can do, that we can hear and be involved originally. So it's just a little comment on if you want a meaningful committee recommendations, it would be helpful. I think we were told when we first started, conservation was important. We worked several months trying to come up with a conservation program, and I think it was a pretty complete one for you. So hopefully you appreciated that. With that said, one of the things that we were very concerned about, we want the water utility to be financially stable and provide reliable service. That means the capital improvement program needs to be as limited as absolutely necessary, but to assure good water service. Unfortunately, when you only have a few thousand customers, it's expensive, especially when you're dealing with a system like it is. These are decisions that the town made years ago to become the owner of the system. And we don't believe, and the committee, I think we didn't vote on this per se, but the consensus was, this isn't a subsidy, this is a city obligation. And therefore, when you talk about how much you're paying out of the general fund, it's not a subsidy. It's the community's contribution to a decision that was made to be in the utility business. Until the system is big enough that you can have reasonable rates without a subsidy, you shouldn't be talking about it as a subsidy. It's just the cost of the town doing business. And that goes for both the water and sewer system. The goal, we have no problem with the objective of making it self-sustaining. But when you have so few customers and you have big expenses like you're talking about now on water resources, you really, the bottom line, are the rates that are being proposed reasonable? And when you look at that last chart and you see where the town of Cave Creek is compared to every other community, you have to start wondering, are you being reasonable? And so with that said, we were left with looking at what are the options in front of us. We were really concerned if you we're going to put a water resource fee on top of a 6% or a 10% increase in rates, each year. And so we were struggling with that. I'm not going to talk about it right now because you've taken that off the table. At least staff's not proposing that be acted on today. So I think you do need to look at that when it does come before you, how best to recover that and how much of that should be put on water utility customers or on connection fees or other types of charges that benefit those who are here and need water, not just through water rates. We did support the 6% option for the next 3 years. And that included for the Desert Hills system too. Although there was some feeling that a 10% made sense, especially when you looked at some of the rate increases because of the changing rates for booster rates and things like that. We just felt that Desert Hills is already at a very high rate and that the rate increase to the extent it was possible should be no higher than what on a percentage basis than what it is going to be for the Cave Creek system. Because they start at a much higher level than the Cave Creek does. So 6% is on a higher dollar figure to begin with, generally speaking. We support the 0 to 4,000 gallon tier and adjusting the 30 to 50 to a 40,000 gallon. You were talking about trying to lower that top tier even further, where the committee thinks that one of the things you should look at is adding some tiers so that you're targeting those high users specifically. Maybe looking at 100, over 100 and hit them really hard and try to get them to use less. That maybe you go from 30 to a very high tier. I don't know, but without looking at the cost of service and some of the customer dynamics, it's hard to make a recommendation at this juncture. But we see 40,000 is a good move, but we don't think that should be the end. And whether it means lowering it only or adding some additional tiers, we're not sure because we need to see the data. We are also concerned that the residential customer tiers are higher than for the commercial customers. We couldn't quite understand. I think it's just economics. When you start with the base rate and they're all the same, that there isn't enough gallonage to deal with it. But we think that it'd be fairer to have everybody on the same wavelength as far as whatever tiers you're talking about, as far as especially on the higher tiers, that they pay the same per gallon than as the residential. But right now it's not. We also we found some on some of the charts we weren't quite sure that they translated correctly, especially when you're looking at the change from having a separate 40 and 50,000 tier, and then they blended it. And I'm not quite sure that the cost that was used is reflective of the actual change because of the dynamic change between the tier. I think the way the chart works, it may not be quite right, but I think some clarification there might be helpful. Basically, we are supportive of the 6% increase, both for both systems, and the 4,000 gallons is as a separate tier, and moving to 40,000 is the main. Now there are other members of the committee here, and they'd like to speak, so I'll go from there. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Merlino. So I want to reiterate just a little bit. We agreed with the above 40,000 gallons, but we think there should be a tier of 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80. We heard a lot of talk today about what are we going to do with those. That might be a good way to either encourage conservation or, well, that would be the best thing. But that's one way that we looked in detail. I want to go back to page 28. on your presentation, please. Okay, so if you're looking at our average usage customer, 13,625 gallons. They're saying proposed 4%. I just want to be a little more clear on the numbers that we're getting. It's a 4.28%. And I think that is worth every time something is calculated, they're rounding. So I think we need to look at some real numbers, okay? And then the other thing that was taken off for tonight, but it's going to be obviously in the future, is talking about a water resource fee. So if you add the water resource fee to our average usage customer, you're increasing rates 42%. So I think if that were to happen, you might have a full room and out the door and down the street. So I think this is something that, yes, it's off the table tonight, but yes, from what I heard today, if you continue with the funding that you're wanting, you're going to need some type of water resource fee. But I think you need to look at that. And for the high-end customer, not just the average customer, the increase would be 53% on their water bills. Okay, so we had asked in our meeting that be on the bottom of this and the percentage be below that so that you could see it. I think that would be helpful to you. So thank you.
Oh,
Mayor, if I could,
okay, Sherry?
if I could address one of the things and in the, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys were done. So in the meeting with the Utility Advisory Committee, I did explain to them, and I know it's something that's a difficult decision of how to divide up the resources that the town has. But my understanding that it's before my time, but when the town decided to have a fire department, was that in order to be able to afford the fire department, the utilities needed to be self-supporting. And so in order to be able to do that, so in the budget process for fiscal year 26, we looked at the general fund and the structural balance or imbalance of the general fund. And the reliance on the utilities of the subsidies from the general fund was outside of the capacity of the general fund to maintain. And so over a period of time, it will continue to drain down the resources and the reserves within the general fund. So the solution is either more revenue or less cost. So whether it's saying, okay, fine, we want the general fund to take on these subsidies and be able to continue with this, then it would mean looking at tax increases or such in order to be able to cover that. And it's one of those things where you can get to a point to where you raise it so much that then you are saying, okay, well, how is that impacting the economy?
It's, yeah, and we have to balance all the town funds. There are other needs besides water. There's fire, there's streets, there's a range of things we have to take care of. So that's a balancing act. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Bob?
I'd like to thank Bill and Nancy for their comments. I totally agree with everything that was said there. And I really do support the idea of increasing tier levels above the 40,000. And I think that could be used as a revenue generator for the water resource fee. And I think we should be very aggressive about targeting those high use customers. And this is a perfect use for those funds. In addition, I think we have to think about long-range plans. I know you're doing that with everything you do, but with the Taiwan semiconductor business kind of increasing growth in this whole area, I think there's gonna be demand for new homes in the area, new businesses, and I don't know what else. But suggested to Sean, and I know he's thought about this in the past, about intergovernment agreements, perhaps starting with one hooking up the Desert Hills area with Tremonto, Phoenix's Tremonto zone. Give us a backup supply, also provide for future growth and better handling of any brush fires that might happen out in that region. We also talked about perhaps doing some intergovernment agreement with our sewer system. I don't know at this point if we can interconnect and actually do some business that Phoenix adds on their side of the highway. We've talked about sharing some of the processed water back and forth. I think this is a definite thing that we need to take a look at, you know, to get the best utilization out of that asset, you know, for everybody involved. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Linda, were you wanting to get up and say something?
They said it all.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank the Utility Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I thank you people for doing the work you've done. Lynn had mentioned to me something about, you know, not being pleased with the lack of communication. I think you people have come up with some important ideas, and I think we need a better way to get together as a part of this whole process.
Okay, so let's continue then with the decisions. What decisions do you need? We get I think we got a summer, winter consensus. I didn't hear anybody thinking summer and winter made any sense. So what's next?
So Desert Hills, we have the two different options, looking at 6% revenue increases or 10% revenue increases.
We already just hammered them with huge increases. I'm thinking maybe the 6% is a little bit more reasonable for them. It'll spread things out over time. And yeah, I know I'm one of the guys pushing for, you know, it should pay for itself. But I think we've kind of made them pay through the nose already. So maybe the 6% is probably a good idea for them.
Other comments on Desert Hills, whether the 6 or 10?
Just in reading the chart on what increases, isn't it the Desert Hills customers who would be fairly flat in their increases? Based on the new tiers, the number of people who are in the Lifeline, you know,
But
bottom user?
The lower tiers, yes. And then as they progress and get higher and higher, then they're going to see bigger increases.
Right.
So really the 6% increase is really being paid by the top 2 tiers, not the bottom tier. The bottom tiers, again, most of the people will see.
It would be flat to no increase.
To some extent that the third tier and a lot more in the top 2 tiers.
Yeah.
So the 20 to 30,000 gallons would see bigger increases, but for sure even greater at the 30 to 40 and the over the 40,000.
Yeah, that's
so
the 6%, right?
either one.
I just think we've kind of hammered them on pretty big increases over the last few years. Maybe it's time to just throttle back a touch.
Okay, other comments, other opinions?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Dusty on that and what the Water Advisory Committee said earlier. I think 6% for now would probably be good.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion that we go with the 6% increase.
I do have a public comment.
Okay, yeah, let's hear.
David Phelps.
We normally make it after that's all right. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah. We probably have several of these decisions to make, so
Well,
you may want to talk
the
about.
chart's relevant. I'd like to have the town target the 44 and the 56 customers that are at that 40,000 or more gallons per month. Because you're talking about using 131 acre feet and 100 customers over the year. And the question is, if we reduce that to the 13,500 gallon number that is my assumed right to water, I think we need to start educating those 100 people about their assumed right. And the assumed right is 13,500 gallons. They now have a meter that can tell them when they hit that number every month. And that would be the kind of education where they could go, I'm only on day 2. That's all the water I have a right to. And we have this structurally set up in our ordinances about our drought contingency. And there's no reason why we would want to wait for drought contingency until that day. I would start targeting at least that first 100 people as your marketing experience to show them how much water they have a right to. And whatever day that thing comes to their phone or comes to their email, you can just start giving them the notice. Hey, you hit your allowance. You hit your legal allotment on whatever day you hit it on. And I think that targeting of that set of people, and then you work to the next group. You got 48 on this one. I forget what it was on the other side. And so you work the scale backwards to where you're not sending this notice of information to any of the 442 people that are using less than 4,000 gallons. You don't want them to know they got 13,000 gallons they can use. No, seriously, target market. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Phelps? That's all? Okay. I'll just make a motion that we limit the rate to 6%.
Second.
Okay, we've heard all the reasons, so Dusty?
No, I mean, we've squeezed blood from that turnip already, so I think 6% is a pretty reasonable increase based on the cost we're incurring.
And just to clarify that, that's across the board.
Right.
Desert Hills in.
Yeah.
Other comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. What's next, Sherry?
So basically the motion to proceed with the posting requirements, scheduling the public hearing, as I had mentioned, so the report that was provided in your packet was a draft. So Kevin and I will be going through all this to get the report finalized, and then that report, once it's updated based off of the 6% for Desert Hills, 6% for Cave Creek Water, no seasonality. That's what we'll be doing, applying all that into the report, and then that'll be the report that will be posted.
Okay, I move direct staff to proceed with statutory posting requirements and scheduling a public hearing for proposed increase in utility rates based on the scenarios selected by council, which I think we've done.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
I don't mean to interrupt. I don't think you voted on the sewer.
No structure.
So it's included in all of this. We didn't offer different scenarios. It was just the one scenario.
Is that 6% off?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to beat a dead horse again, when the rates get established and the public becomes aware of them, then for the first time, maybe the town can compete for customer satisfaction with any other alternatives that may come down the line if anything happens with the RFP and we look at privatizing water. Because if they don't like the job the town is doing, then we examine the alternative of privatization, and that doesn't prove to be viable or competitive financially, at least we've done our due diligence. So I think it gives the public at least a measured set of information now to have this going forward before whatever information comes out in the first quarter, hopefully of 26, to see if the town is competitive with providing what was requested tonight, which was assured and quality water and so forth. I just think it gives another data point that the town has not provided in the past. And it may or may not be a good idea, but I think it's progress to be competitive with ourselves with what else would be an option. Thank you.
I think staff needs to prepare a communications plan that rationalizes why we're doing things, what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the size of the the mountain is we're about to climb. And then, and he just hit that hard, really for the next several months, just about the rates. And then, of course, we have the conservation issue that also needs its own plan. Does anybody on council agree or disagree? Absolutely. With it?
More education.
So Mayor, just on that point, just yesterday, the communications director and I talked about that. So he is going to be working that up.
Great. Get to work, Bo. What are you doing sitting there? Okay, are you all set then?
Yes, thank you.
Kevin, as usual, good to see you.
You too.
Okay, the next one, and Sherry is sitting right there, is first reading of ordinance number 2025-16, amending the town tax code to increase the transaction privilege tax rate on selected tax classifications and designating an effective date of February 1, 2026.
So we did at a previous meeting, we did talk about the increasing the rates for the hotel and the bed tax. And so now we're at the point of doing the first reading for the ordinance. So some of these slides are a repeat of what I had shown before. So this is showing based off of our current rate. So currently our bed tax rate is at 4%. The hotel tax rate is in the all other category at the 3%. And so there's the comparison of the ranges with the other municipalities and the number that have rates exceeding what our rates are here. So within the state statutes, it talks about a discriminatory tax as it relates to the hotel and bed tax, but also any hospitality industry. So the discriminatory tax is the portion of a tax rate in a particular category that exceeds the rate imposed on other businesses. And so typically that is looking at the retail rate because that's where most of the businesses are at, is what is the retail rate, which here is at 3%. The maximum that you can increase any of the hospitality categories in any 1 year is based off of the CPI compared to the average of the last 5 years. So that cap is at 11%. We're not considering anything anywhere near that. The hospitality industry businesses, so as I said, so that's not just the hotel and bed tax categories. And we're not proposing for any of these. We're only proposing for those, but hospitality industry also includes restaurant and bar, liquor store, grocery store, convenience store. In the statutes, it allows a discriminatory tax up to 2% before restrictions go into place. So our 3%, which is our base, the retail rate that we're looking at, we can have a rate up to 5% on any of the hospitality categories. So the hotel and the bed tax that we're looking at before we start having restrictions. When we go above that amount, then the restrictions are dedication to promoting tourism. And there's a list there of the things that related to tourism that it would have to go towards. So related to promotion or maintaining maintenance related to tourism. You know, I want to make sure that it's clear for everyone. So in the Model City Tax Code, that's where we find the definitions. And when we say the hotel tax category, it really means a lot more than hotel. So it's, I think, probably like an old thing from many years ago that they used the terminology hotel and then they just changed, they created a definition saying, well, we also mean all of these other things. So in there, they've got tourist home, house, rooming house, apartment house, trailers, other lodging places. It does specifically include places like foster homes, rest homes, shelter care homes, etc. Transient, as far as defining compared to short-term rental versus long-term rental, is defined as the use of the lodging space for less than 30 consecutive days. When you get to 30 consecutive days, then it becomes a long-term rental, and state statutes changed and said we can no longer do the long-term rental tax. The lodging space, so part of the definition that they have regarding a lodging space, they're talking about rooms, trailer spaces, or other residential dwelling spaces. So this includes things like RV parks and the like. Also, just to clarify, because I guess there was maybe a little misunderstanding before. So this defines for what hotel is, what lodging is, what transient is. It's not that there's any difference between the supposed hotel category, which includes all these things, or the bed tax category. Both of those apply to all of these. The annual revenue increase estimates. So for each 1% increase in the hotel and bed tax category would equate to about $57,000 a year. So increasing the hotel sales tax from the 3% to 5% would be approximately $114,000. The bed tax is at 4%, so increasing from 4 to 5% adds the 1%. So the total of those two, the 3% increase, is about $171,000 estimate. This was looking at a scenario of lodging. So if we had, say, a lodging facility, a hotel or something of that nature, where there were 100 rooms, across the country, the average occupancy over the course of a year is about 69%. They're not always at full occupancy in the hotels. I used an average room rate of $150 a night. And so the generation of TPT revenue on a scenario like that is a total of $378,000. I know that there was a comment about increases. And so even to break this down a little bit further, of just say one room. So if we're doing one room at $150, currently the rate that would be paid with the 3% hotel plus the 4% bed tax, so a total of 7% tax, puts the total for the night, just assuming between the rate and the taxes, not fees that an online marketplace or anything like that might tack on. That would be $160 and 50 cents for the night. This proposed increase to add the 2% to the hotel and the 1% to the bed tax would raise it to $165 a night. So an increase of the $450. That increase of the $450 is a 3% increase, the total of those two amounts. I think what the person was commenting on was that the increase in the tax portion, that the rate that they were citing, but the overall bill for the customer is only a 3% increase. So tonight is the first reading of the ordinance. If council chooses to move forward, we would have a public hearing and second reading of the ordinance on the November 18th meeting. And the Department of Revenue requires 60 days of effectiveness. So it would not be effective within 30. It would have to be 60 days. So that would put us at February 1st for the implementation of this rate. And then just this applies to the fiscal sustainability portion of the strategic plan. So are there any questions?
Questions?
Well, I was contacted by probably the person that you were referring to, who had some significant complaints about this proposal. And I have to admit that it's a little disconcerting. I understand how we need to continue to seek new avenues for revenue. I also know that we don't want to hurt our business owners and our residents who happen to have VRBOs. So I think that there has to be, again, a balance.
Microphone.
And I also think that his comments should be read into the record, if we can do that. Do you want me to do that? Okay, is that all right with you?
Well, it's not typically, well, yeah, I guess we can, but I think this is in the record, isn't this letter we received in comment, isn't that in the record?
We can add it to the record, but I know he did request as well.
But I have questions on that too. I can't make the numbers work between what is said in here and the presentations.
So shall we just read that portion?
Yeah.
So Sherry could answer them for us. First of all, let's just identify it's Steve Breckner, who is a resident here and also the chairman of the planning commission and also the owner of a guest house that he charges $400 a month, a night for. So this proposed tax increase is not just a small increase, it's meteoric. The proposed 3% increase represents an approximate 43% increase over the current 7% tax imposed on transient lodging rentals. It would make Cave Creek's transient lodging tax rates the highest in all of Maricopa County and a whopping 67% higher than our neighbor that competes with us in Carefree. For property owners such as myself, a tax increase of this magnitude would result in my typical short-term rental costing $170 more, with a comparative rental in Carefree costing $225 less. That difference is noticeable to renters, and property owners will likely face increased vacancies due to exorbitant costs associated with short-term rentals in Cave Creek. That's the paragraph that Bob can't quite.
What is the 7% tax imposed on transient?
So it's the 3% hotel tax and the 4% bed tax.
Is that what we have right now?
That's what we have right now.
And so we're doing a 1 and a 2 to go up to 10 total?
Correct.
So Mayor and Council, I mean, I'm just doing the math in my head and Sherry, maybe you can correct me. Wouldn't that just be a $12 increase on top of his $400 that he charges?
Correct.
So we're talking not the number he's talking about. It's not nearly as high. He's paying a 73%. I don't know where he's.
Well, the 43% is taking the tax amount and comparing the tax amount at the 7% and then the additional 3%. So 3% increase on a 7% amount is where he's coming up with the 43%. He's not looking at what the total bill is to the customer. He's only looking at the tax component.
But the net increase would be $12 if this were to go through. On a $400 a night.
Right.
Stay.
He's not able to be here tonight, which is why, he sent this in. He'll probably come to the second reading.
Yeah, this is the first reading, so we have time to correct any mistake.
So what's the current bed tax and the comparable tax down in Phoenix right now? Any idea?
I don't think I attached it on this
saw
one.
that last-
It was on the one before, and I
saw
don't
that
remember.
last meeting.
Yeah.
Break out through the whole state.
We're kind of comparable, right? This would put us up comparable with what they're doing, as I recall.
I don't think Phoenix was one of the ones that was higher.
I believe it put us in the top 30%, and it was other destinations like Sedona, Jerome,
Yeah.
other assorted tourist destinations, Bisbee.
Yeah.
Yeah, my recollection was Phoenix and Scottsdale and Tempe were kind of in the middle.
So theirs is 8% total? 5.3, and we're talking 10% total? I think they have they have other taxes they add on there. My youngest son is a manager of a hotel down in Phoenix, and he's always complaining about their taxes. They're ridiculously high because they had a whole bunch of fees on top of it. So we're talking apples to apples with the taxes, but we're really talking apples to oranges because other towns add other fees to it that room cleaning fee, this fee, that fee, the other fee that we don't normally charge.
The other thing
if you
is-
go down to Phoenix, you're not, a $400 room night is going to cost you $500 a night. Just saying.
The other thing I just was trying to make a point on too, to your point, is they're making it on volume. They have the sheer number, you know, I don't know how many thousands of rooms Scottsdale has, but what do we have, like under 150 rooms total in town?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's got to be less than that.
It's either 200 or it's just not very many. The example we had was if we were to have 100-room hotel, that's what we would get. Now we do have at Rancho Mañana, we have the Hilton there, but that's a timeshare fractional ownership that on occasion those owners can put those their units into the inventory for the Hilton to rent out. And that's when we'll get the bed tax in those situations. We don't get it on timeshares in general.
So there's a hotel project that's in review right now behind the post office. How many rooms is that projected to be?
So is Luke here? My understanding was about 100 to 120.
So that would
rooms.
be the biggest property in town, so.
Correct.
Questions? Tom?
Just a dumb quick question. Airbnbs, I know you've told me before, but I've forgotten the answer. They are covered by this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the average person's cost to do an Airbnb at Cave Creek, I actually, who knows this, is Teresa. When you did your original research, it was higher than $400, as I recall, for
For the,
an
Right.
Airbnb in Cave Creek for a single night.
that's changed, but probably the average was high around that.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
because it's typically a whole dwelling, not just a room.
Oh, is this just a room? What the
No, he's got a guest house, I think.
How is that different than an Airbnb? He's renting a structure in a residential neighborhood.
6 of one, half dozen of
Or
the other.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
the same.
Okay.
So that
Well,
definition of the transient and the lodging, it doesn't matter if it's the whole house, if it's just a room, if it's the couch, like it all fits into that
They
definition.
can just charge more for the entire dwelling though.
Sure. Well, then we've already got this practice done with the Airbnbs. Okay.
Well-
Sorry, I'm not sure that helped anybody at all, but helped me.
Well, we don't have a property tax in town.
Right.
And we have roads and fire departments and police, and we're paying for all that. When people come to town, they use that and that keeps them safe and transports them around. So
And I just recall, I believe it was last year, we had a couple out of state or maybe even Canadian visitors that ended up hiking Spur Cross and they ended up having a very expensive rescues. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that, I'm just saying typically this is paid by visitors, but sometimes they take advantage or need to utilize town services like the rescue or the fire services, emergency medical. So I'm just saying we have something where we're not right now have a dedicated revenue source. I'm not saying that this should be, but I'm just saying the concept that visitors that come to town, they should be paying, you know, their fair share to help provide for the services that they may use when they're visiting our town. So.
If I could,
Canadians.
if I could add, so I know we're not necessarily trying to compete with some of the other major tourist areas, but across the country, some of the large attractors of tourists have 10%, 15% rates for transient occupancy as their taxes. So it's not uncommon across the country.
New York.
I'd be happy to make
California.
a motion, Mayor Morse. I'd be happy to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
If everybody's done, everybody got their questions? Yeah.
Move to approve first reading of ordinance number 2025-16, amending the town tax code to increase the transaction privilege tax rate on selected tax classifications and designating an effective date of February 1, 2026.
Second.
Okay, was there a public comment on this?
I have no one.
Oh, good. I bypassed it again.
Yeah, I
Good.
still consider this a modest tax increase. And I think when you look at competitive pricing for surrounding areas, if Airbnb and hotels are looking at Carefree, North Scottsdale, North Phoenix, they'll be able to still be profitable at a competitive rate. So it might be a slight increase in the tax, maybe a slight decrease in what their base rate is for their customers, but I think it's still in the ballpark of fair pricing and adequate to generate some additional tax revenue. So that's why I support it.
Tom,
Nothing, thanks.
other comments?
The tax increase we're talking about in an average room is less than a Starbucks coffee.
I look forward to hearing from Mr. Breckner. He's very vocal. He's very articulate. He can defend himself on this.
Yeah, he sure can. He's a lawyer too.
Right, that too.
Nothing against lawyers, Bill. Okay, all those in favor of the first reading?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay.
Mayor, the final item on the agenda tonight is the staff report on the pavement management analysis. Tyler Thurman is going to be doing the presentation. He's our Deputy Public Works Director. Unfortunately, Hal Marin, our Public Works Director, was unable to be here tonight.
Yeah, and I saw you out there Thursday night working on out of your sphere of influence on that water leak. We had all the cavalry was out to fix that pipeline out there.
Yeah, everybody
Thursday
got
night.
muddy that night.
Yeah.
Oh, good evening, Mayor and
Tyler,
Council.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm here tonight to present the pavement management plan update. So our previous pavement management plan was given to us in August 2020. Town Council approved the contract with IMS on September 16th of 24 to update that plan. The collection of all the data performed by IMS was done in February, and the report was delivered in April 2025. The 5-year plan projects contained within the report are programmed to start fiscal year 27. And the plan is a guideline to be used by staff to outline annual projects during the budgeting process, receive bids annually for identified budgeted projects, and present bids received with recommendations award of contracts to perform the work. The town's strategic plan established an average pavement condition index of 71 for the town's roads. And all projects in this plan are suggestions, not mandated, and subject to available funding. For the most part, this plan's relatively similar to the previous 2020 plan. It was performed by the same company, but there are some new updates. The plan provides street inventory, condition summary by segment, a 5-year rehabilitation plan based on a $1.5 million annual budget. That's up from 1 million in the previous 5-year plan.
Tyler, if you can advance to the next slide.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Where was I? So it provides full-size maps.
Okay.
And then 2 new items are current backlogged roads. These are roads that have a PCI of less than 40. And projected new backlog roads that will happen within the next 5 years. The town has subscribed to an annual subscription with Inform Viewer. This is a program that allows us to see each segment of the road and gives us all the data on that. In the slide here, this is the view of Cave Creek Road eastbound. The information included is the location of the segment, a photo of the road location, pavement information, and on the bottom right, you can see the pavement condition. All those little lines are different cracks and such on the actual road surface in that segment.
That was that blue dot.
The
graphic on the lower right.
Yeah, so depicting on the severity of the imperfections is color coded. The town has entered into this agreement with IMS to update the data on the information on a biannual basis. This will allow town staff to track how the pavement management program is impacting the overall PCI. PCI goals called out in the strategic plan. The recent agreement will allow the data to be updated as well as graphics depicting the road condition within the town following the completion of the project. And on the next slide, which I'll just jump to, it shows data collected on Schoolhouse Road, south of Cave Creek Road. At the time of the collection, the road was in very poor condition, as indicated by the red line. The road improvement project was completed in June 25, so after the collection, and is now in excellent condition. So once we update the Inform system, it will update all of our roads that we have done. The PCI for this affected road segment will be adjusted from 24.2 to 95. And this will impact our total PCI of the town. As you can see, so south of Cave Creek Road, Schoolhouse Road, top right picture is the old section of roadway. Bottom middle will be, relative to our new pictures as we update the system. And you can see on that little square on the middle right how many cracks and stuff that road actually had before we did a full rehabilitation. So in summary, the proposed improvements for this fiscal year were taken from the August 2020 plan and presented to town council for the 26 budget. The new plan includes a 5-year proposed program that has been based upon the annual budget of 1.5 million. The new plan identifies backlog roadways in a separate appendix where the PCI is less than 40%. These roadways are not included in the 5-year plan, but will be considered for inclusion in annual repair program over the 5 years as funding is available. And town staff will continue to present annual programs to the town council as part of the budget process and bring the results of the bids for the proposed construction of these projects to council for approval and award of the contracts. And after that,
Tyler, can you back up?
Yes, sir.
That third bullet confuses me. The new plan identifies backlog roadways with a PCI less than 40. That means they're in bad shape,
Yes.
but they're not included in the 5-year proposed plan.
Yeah, so when they're in that bad a shape, a lot of times they need full reconstruction. And I don't necessarily know why they don't include them into the 5-year plan.
Who's they? That's
IMS.
Oh, okay.
So what staff will do is we'll, try to add them in as we can to update, like all of the pavement rehabs that we did last year were all basically on the backlog of this new plan. So once we enter all those in, it's going to decrease our backlog significantly and increase our PCI hopefully by quite a decent amount. But yeah, for some reason, not to my knowledge, why they're not included in the 5-year actual annual plan.
So Mayor, if I may, having worked in other cities that even used IMS as well, is the backlog sometimes will be seeking additional funding through the budget process to knock out the backlog. But at the natural occurrence that we will be doing over the 5 years, we will be addressing the failing roads that are 40 or below. But there will be a backlog that while the backlog is coming down in number, there's still going to be always some roads on the backlog. And every couple of years we'll be coming and asking to supplement and knock those out in addition to the $1.5 million we spend each year. So that I believe is the plan.
Yeah.
That
as far as I know,
how we will address that.
So
So
what's,
it's level funding over 5 years. And we evaluate, the numbers get changed every time you have work done. It changes your average and your PCI level for the community and the averages based on local roads, arterials, and circulators. And we will provide that to you each year, and we'll do an update, show you how we're making progress on our roads. But the backlog gets addressed with additional funding.
I think, just weather in the desert, we get the rains, some of the roads go to crap. The PCI index puts it on the backlog, even though the road's drivable. And then, but that isn't on the 5-year plan for fixing all those things. So that's how we get the extra in the backlog.
what's missing here is the total cost to get our roads up to snuff. I mean, okay, but for $1.5 million, what do I get for the $1.5 million? How many roads am I gonna, is that keeping the roads that are in decent shape, decent?
Yeah, so that's supposed to increase our total PCI to our goal.
But you're not
So-
including the poor roads in the PCI, right?
The PCI is an average of all the roads for that particular category of road.
Okay.
And as we're knocking out and doing either rehabilitation or preservative treatments, it's increasing those average numbers for the PCI. But there are going to be some, we call it like a triage where I came from before, where there's going to be some roads, it's just, you're going to have to let it go because you don't want to throw good money after bad. And so we have to recognize that we're going to get probably potholes. We'll just do, the minimum on those to keep them drivable. But at some point, we're going to have to do a complete reconstruction or a mill and overlay on those types of roads. And so that's generally the intent of a program like this.
So the 1.5 million is for road maintenance and tolerable repair, whereas the backlog are ones that need to just be completely redone. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They're failing roads or
Okay.
you
They've
know, in
fallen below the level of repair.
Exactly. And we do provide the council with a listing, and I thought we were going to have that tonight, of what road projects are going to be undertaken this year. I know we did that during the budget process. Identified which road segments we're going to address this year. So we can do that, and maybe on Hal's next quarterly report, we can include that to the council.
Yeah. Now this year, all the projects this year are from the end of the 2020 report though. But this new report's not starting until 27, fiscal year 27. So this budget was created before we had the results of this report. So we had to, finish the previous report before we start the new one. So instead of guessing on what the next plans projects would be, we finished the 2020 report projects, and then now the following, this report will start in 27.
Well, I think as stewards of the town's roads, that we need to understand how many are in the poor, how many miles of roads we have that are in poor, and are we making progress on it? Are we spending enough money on it? This doesn't give me any idea about how much money we need to budget for roads and how long it'll take to get them up to an acceptable level.
Well, with saying that, I mean, with the 1 million that we previously had budgeted in the last report, which was underfunded, we did increase from a 66 to a 67 total PCI. And then by increasing that funding to 1.5, and we spoke with IMS about how they did their engineering estimates, because previously they were giving us estimates of just the application of the product that it would be doing, not the total cost of a project. So when we were budgeting, we were going off of their estimates, and it was significantly low. So then we had to adjust. Hal had to go up by 100% on a lot of these projects. So
could we go back to the last slide? Mr. Mayor, I greatly appreciate your comment that will appear in Teresa's minutes concerning an acknowledgement that you have a large number of poor roads that are in backlog and not getting repaired because of funding. When Hal read this, the last four words in bullet 3, I insisted that Hal put it there. You, the legislators, have an immunity when you make a decision regarding funding, and your question couldn't have been better placed. That doesn't mean you can't eventually fix the roads, but it also means if someone gets injured, their attorney can't put that slide before the jury and say, these people accepted poor roads. What you said was, we have poor roads and we need to fund.
Yeah. I just don't know how much, the size, I don't know the size of the, mountain. If there is a mountain. Yeah, or the depth of the pond. Other people, other questions or comments?
If we can get a map that shows the IMS, you know, not a detailed one, but just show the ones that are under 40 right now.
Right now,
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
am I able to use this computer?
I mean, that'll at least give us a sense for, you know, how big is the bill going to be?
Ryan, how do I minimize this? There we go. What's that? I don't know. They actually.
You know, I think he's just wanting to see this. I don't think you have to
I
do it
don't,
right now.
I'm not looking
Yeah.
for it right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
If,
sorry,
maybe
I-
next meeting, if
Yeah.
the town manager can give us just
Yeah,
a
we will
little-
do that.
Yeah, we
map.
can log you into the actual Inform.
I don't want to
program.
get into Inform or anything else. All I want is just show us a little, you know, 8.5 by 11 landscape.
We'll do a GIS graphic that
Perfect.
shows you.
Just how many miles,
color
I think
coded.
that would answer the mayor's question, how many miles of roadway we're gonna have to fix
Right.
or redo.
Understandable.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
What we should do, though, is we took a look at how much we've spent in the years past for, you know, what you're calling the mill and other things. We should have kind of there's $1.5 million set aside to maintain the roadways. What's that extra piece to
I
actually
understand.
fix roadways? Okay, that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
We'll definitely do that.
Okay, well, thank you, Tyler. Thank you for your hard work and all the efforts you put in the town. I certainly saw you out there getting dirty Thursday night.
Tyler, how many years have you worked with us?
I just hit 19.
Ah.
So, thank you. Been a long time. It's almost at
longer.
that halfway point of my life where I've almost worked here longer than more than half of my life. So.
Oh my God. I wish I could say it about something.
Do you have a tattoo from the town on you?
No.
Come on.
Okay, that completes our agenda tonight. So by state